Friendos, hello, Friendos, hello, it's me, Berry Goldheart, and I'm back here with my second guest on the podcast, So, I am here speaking with Shopnil from the CRC community. They've been a little bit all over the place. And we all have a lot of things to say and talk about. And we're gonna have a great time today. I'll leave it open for them to introduce themselves and give you any more of the thoughts and whatever before we get into topics and stuff. Whoa!
Hey, I'm Shopnil, Shop, however you want to call me. Like as Barry said, I met him on the CRC. I guess we sort of knew each other before then because we played Minecraft a bit. When there was like a combination server between all the communities that we were in. But yeah, I met him there, and they're a great person. I'm really glad to have met them.
So we do have things we want to talk about. And I think let's go over what the topics are real quick. And then we'll decide which one we'll go to first. So we want to talk about community building, internet cultures, dealing with conflict, Minecraft, online forum versus social roleplay, and we will also talk about kindness versus niceties. So it's 6 topics, but most of it will probably blend into other ones. But I'll, does the basic one want to cover?
Well, we can probably just go in order with like starting with community building and stuff like that. I feel like he sort of has somewhat an experience with that, being in role play communities and whatnot.
Okie dokie. So, I will open the door for you, since you are the guest, to talk about community building. So, community building in general is something that's like pretty big topic. So, where do you want to start with that? Like in general online, or as a whole around the world, or whatever? Just let's go.
Well, I suppose we can sort of start off with online communities because that's kind of where we met, and I always say that it's something that's like I guess really changing depending on the times because I've definitely noticed I've actually gone through something like this recently on like Twitter where smaller communities or early on in a community, it's definitely much more, I suppose, calmer, nicer. There's not a lot of things to deal with and whatnot. But I've noticed like as time goes on, and I'm not sure this is true in like it doesn't seem to be really true in communities in real life, but definitely internet communities, things start to like deviate a lot more as things become bigger. Somehow a bunch of issues just always start, and it becomes like much more chaotic and not as great as like it used to be. I guess like an example of this would be like on Twitter, I was in like the Pikmin community, Pikmin being like, game by Nintendo if you don't know that. And there was only it was a very niche community, very small. There were only like 3 games out at the time, two if you were a bit earlier than them. And everyone else, it was like very close knit like community. It kind of was like a village, I guess I could compare it to, where everyone kind of just knew each other. We all just knew exactly, how everyone was and what everyone was doing. And we always like, we shared this, common interest in the game Pikmin, and everyone was kind of cool and chill. And sometime around, I'd say like 2023, I kind of blame like the release of the fourth game, to be honest. It kind of just blew up, which, at first isn't completely so bad because like, oh, it's pretty nice to have some new people in here. More people actually care about the stuff that we care about. But I don't know. I just felt like as the community grew, as more people were introduced, as new people, maybe some old people coming back, just like came into the community, it just became more chaotic, more out of control, more issues somehow popped out of nowhere. Like, yeah, I'll admit there were some issues in the past, but there's always issues everywhere. But it just got worse somehow, and like,
Is that?
I don't know, and everyone kind of just seemed to split. There were like always like
Yeah.
sides and issues. There were always teams. You had to be on one side or the other, and I just was
Wow.
never a fan of that. And
Cultural decay does seem to occur faster in a digital space. I'm gonna quickly agree on that one. Yeah.
yeah, I've definitely noticed that it just seems to get worse. And uh, this is not like common in all communities that become big, but I feel like definitely something that becomes big and quickly all of a sudden it just seems to, yeah, like you said, deteriorate just very quickly. And uh, I don't know, I guess like a cause of that would be just a place growing way too bigger than it should have in a small amount of time. I don't know, something like that. What do you?
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, when it comes to that part of a community, when it's smaller and niche like that, it definitely feels more like if there's a bad seed that, is like a bad actor, let's say that because that's the technical term, they're way more obvious and people generally are like, whoop, and give them no real power in a smaller space. Except for you might have your one troll who everyone just knows, like, hey, that's our pet troll, basically. Like they're always saying something god awful, but that's just them, And for the most part, everyone gets along and is really tight knit and hoping pop each other up. But as it gets bigger and bigger, you wind up having weird things show up, like there's segmentations, there's all these other stuff. But bad actors are able to hide in the crowd. And they're not the only issue, but you can't tell when someone is a bad actor as easily in a bigger group like that. And so people will make decisions that wind up leaving roles and decisions that were made by bad actors becoming a normal habit of your community. Then in online spaces, especially, we see that happen really fast in like political spaces or stuff like that. It takes a lot more time for those to really start affecting the system. Like we look at in like the US, for example, there's some decisions that like Bill Clinton made way back when he was like in office. And they didn't really start having weird economic downgrades and problems and creating these weird politics who want to like do strange things with money that's supposed to go to the people until like 15 or so years later. Whereas if that had happened in, a digital space, like say it was a political loving Twitter group, who knows, and they had someone come in there and make a decision that would make those in power within the community, want to take funds from, say, a community pot or whatever, it would become very obvious within like a month or two that something went wrong. And so it'd be a lot easier to find that the source of the problem, but at the same time, if it's expanding as a group, it's a lot harder to actually deal with it, instead of being like, oh, we do have this problem. Let's just look into it here and see where where it came from and do something about it. It's a lot harder in a digital space, especially when you factor for things like Discord and stuff, where sometimes the conversation that happened that caused the initial weirdness might be gone. Yeah, so yeah, that can be hard. So,
No, I definitely agree with that. It's just I don't know. I guess it was the first time that I had experienced something like that, so I guess it really surprised me how different everything ended up being. Um, I know like it doesn't surprise me as much now. I'm
yeah.
kind of used to it, unfortunately, but it did surprise me at the time, like how different things ended up being. It was kind of sad to see.
I do have a thing I can mention where I noticed this affecting a large amount of people, like globally. If you're okay with me talking about that for a bit.
Oh yeah, sure, go ahead.
Okay, so back in the old days when like Neopets was a popular thing and stuff like that, and just before then, the the furry community online, I'm just gonna say it like it is, was a very different space than it is now. And I really noticed the change because when I first encountered them, I encountered them through things like art that was made for games like D&D, etc. And then I would later learn, oh, there's this community around them who find this stuff incredibly attractive and are really into it. And I was like, okay. And they had their own games and things back then, even then. And when you would check them out, they were like these really colorful, beautiful, like dreamscapes almost that you would play inside of. And within there, the customization of characters was like king. Like I remember I went into one of their little games because it was all about like exploration and chatting was like the whole thing. And I spent like almost 11 hours just building a character. I could customize like, you know, the digits of the fingers and stuff with such intensity as color and everything. When, you know, I wasn't even part of their actual like community. I was just someone who was sort of checking out the space. And it seemed like there was a lot of this this type of stuff. And I mean, that's even back then when, you know, like Neopets was new and inventive. This community had games where you were customizing the digits of your character. Like it was insane and intense. And it was all like on these like dreamscapes that were just really cool. But if you go and you look at the community now, it's only been, you know, only so long, like it's only a few decades or something like that. If you look at it now, they're a lot weirder. Like instead of being focused on like the dream of what it would be to be with like animal type peoples of all sorts of different kinds in a sort of like wonderful dream, it's gotten very weird and like how do you say it, like use a lot of things about like controlling and all this other stuff and weird other things thrown into it that sort of dominate the space, which really is just like a dramatic change in how their community used to be to how it is now, where, you know, there's a lot of things that we would consider in normal communities to be like a toxic or weird thing, or like this is very niche and, you know, like, or even gross, which is like normal, common stuff there. And I think it's very strange how quickly they changed. You know, if you look at a culture like you say, look at France, and they do a lot of rebelling and all this other stuff, but it still takes them a long time to change. The cultural landscape of France is very similar, even though they've adopted all these new people from other countries into their country after the wars in Afghanistan and everything. There's still a lot of what is France still there. So it's very noticeable when a community online has reached that point where it just skyrockets into something new, and you can't predict the direction it's gonna go. Because I would have thought that community would have gone a way of being very rainbow color, over the top, in that sort of direction, and be like supporting painters and all that sort of stuff. But they wound up going a very different direction. You know, so if I had that bet money, what would have happened to that community? I'd have lost money because it went very different. Well, that's where I noticed the most, like just internationally and stuff. The little online community went poof and changed entirely into something totally different than what it was.
Oh yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
definitely something that I've noticed in communities. It's not surprising. It's pretty surprising, but I don't know. It's really confusing to be honest. But because, like you said, with like countries and stuff, there's always like a base like culture that stays. It doesn't really change no matter like how many new people are in. But for some reason, just like online communities, it just deteriorates more. For some reason.
Yeah. Like when cultures decay, in the real world, it usually takes time or a very traumatic event. But online, it can just happen from introduction of people real fast. Like normally, a big introduction or surplus of people in the real world, it causes change into a culture, but not so dramatically, like not like overnight. But online, it could be like oh, you got all these people from this one community who are now part of your community because they're now there, and you have to deal with them like, let's say you were a Shantae fan before, and then let's say Shantae made it into, you know, Nintendo Smash, like as an actual character as opposed to the way she did. You know, she was like a weird little trophy thingy. Yeah, but let's say she made it in there as a character. Then all of a sudden, the Smash community would be part of the Shantae community. And that could cause a bunch of cultural clashes and shifts in our perspective and how interactions and what's expected of the character or what people even talk about or care about when it comes to Ben. So, that you know, it's not to say always for the worse, but it's dramatically different. And that's something I want to point in that it can happen just over seemingly nothing. Yeah. So I guess since we've got over that, we should talk about how it is to try to build a community online. That would make sense.
That's a good step. I guess for building actual like a good community, I'd say like there definitely has to be good like moderation. And I don't mean like moderation in terms of like, oh, we're gonna like have a group of people who moderate everything. I mean more like there needs to be more self and community moderation. Like we should be able to look at our own actions and judge like, hey, is what I did here like good? Is what I'm doing here good? And people of the community should,
Yeah.
be able to like call out others and say, hey, what you're doing here isn't good. And I feel like it shouldn't also be like something we shouldn't like shame people either if they do something bad because people make mistakes. But I also feel like there has to be some sort of moderation between everyone and some sort of like I guess agreed upon like consensus that everyone should have like hey these are things that we should not be doing but these are things that we can do and there should be limits that everyone should know and people should be called out for things if they do break these limits. I feel like that's like a good first step, that there has to be a good moderation of some sort.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it because a lot of communities will just put up like a single signpost of like, hey, here's all the things you agreed to and here's what you agreed not to do. And then completely ignore that after they've made it, including the people in charge of the community themselves. This is especially true when it comes to like Minecraft servers, for example. I'll see things like, hey, no profanity, no derogatory terms towards each other, etc. And then, I'll go and look through the thing and there'll be like a bunch of people calling each other rude names back and forth. And if you're new, you have no context to whether or not those people in the main open area talking like that are like best buddies who just, call each other these terms in a friendly manner, or if they're being really rude. So it can really drive new people who want to join and really respect those rules away from the community. If in at least your main open area, there's not an expectation to follow whatever guidelines newbies encounter. So yeah, self-moderation and group moderation of each other is a good point. Like be like, hey, our group says we shouldn't be saying for fatty. You called your buddy, Sat or whatever once today in the main chat. Like, hey, keep that like your private little groups or the little sub areas. Where you want to be promoting each other here and saying positive things, like or whatever your rule is, and keeping people honest about that. So
Yeah, that's definitely
yeah,
something important. I agree that the
I think
honesty is something important.
I think yeah. Go ahead.
No, no, I just wanted to put that in that like I agree with that. Like honesty is like very important. Honesty and trust you in community.
Yeah. I think I'll give a quick continue. So when it comes to things like that, I really liked how, for the most part, the CRC community we're part of, the Conspiracy Research Club, handles things in general. there's a few times where things got weird or stuff like that. But for the most part, everyone's honestly trying their best. And it shows up in ways that are interesting. It is a very international community, and not just like, oh, America and Japan, but it's like the Philippines and Ghana and all these other places where people are from, and they're all interacting. And we have weird things happen, like cultural clashes and stuff, or just misunderstandings as we came from one kind of area or another. I had something specifically happen with me that I think this is didn't talk about. So early on in the days of the CRC, I was really big proponent of, yay, let's all get together, do stuff, and you tell me what you're doing, and I'm going to spread the word and talk about what you're doing, and it's really cool. So people occasionally mistook me as someone with some sort of power within the community. But the only sort of power I had at all was that I had a direct line of communication to Lefty and Rebecca. And that was basically it. That's all. That's the only thing I had going for me at all. And, sometimes I'd be able to talk to Ben, which would be incredibly rarely. But he was like the head of the community. He's the guy who's actually in charge of CRC. But that only happened 4 or 5 times. But yeah, so that's all that I had. I had nothing else. I wasn't even empowered by anyone there to say anything, to tell someone, hey, you're screwing up, stop screwing up. Me, no, I had nothing. So there was this moment where Pyro, who's from Ghana, she had encountered someone else who was from Germany. And there was this big clash because Pyro had learned English from watching, Japanese anime that had been translated to English, and then used that to get out of the bad side of Ghana, which is where she was living, to get some education and get a visa and everything to go move to the US, and went over there to pursue their education. So they had this whole very specific way of how they got there, and then later found the Conspiracy Research Club. And the person from Germany had, gone from, I learned English and stuff from these very specific sort of novels that are about things basically having a bad person become a good lover over time and become someone who you can really invest into, but they're a trash person to begin with, and then you get there, they have to go through all this stuff to become someone like that. And this, they came from that to learn English, and they're oh, these novels and stuff, I'll bring that sort of thing to the CRC. So, and it's really cool. I love stories about love and redemption and all that stuff. They're great. But when Pyro encountered it, the way they had saw it with the way they grew up was that it was something that was promoting slavery and abuse. That's how they saw it. And it was oh no. This is the exact sort of things I escaped from. I need to tell someone in power. And they thought I was in power, so they sent me all this stuff. It was uh-oh. And I'm over there well, I see what they've said, and there's no way I'm going to underplay what they're thinking. But if I just send this to the official GMs and stuff at the time, which was Lefty, if I send it to Lefty, that is going to do one of 2 things. He's either going to, one, really take what that person said too seriously and look at the other person from Germany and go, hey, your stuff's out of line. Bad on you. Or they're going to ignore the person who went through this trauma and just say, yeah, that person's just telling a decently fine story. Meh, forget about it. That was my worry, is that I do one of those 2 things. And I'm uh-oh. So I was okay, I'll just talk to that person from Germany, and we'll have a conversation about this, what someone else thought, why they sort of thought it and stuff and all this. So I had this very honest, very open conversation with them about what this person was thinking and all this stuff, what they said to me and all this stuff. And it made that person, the German, very, very sad. But they understood where they were coming from, and they talked to me about what they'd intended. and everything like that. So we had this like really long conversation, and eventually, like, the way they decided to tell their story, it's rather than just giving up on everything with something that he thought about. She was like, no, you're doing a great story. You need to do stuff. You gotta make it more clear what's going on, what's the intent, and, maybe switch some things up and whatever. Or, the way you're telling this on in the social media space of like Twitter is not working the way that it would if this were a novel. Because if this were a novel, yeah, it would be working great for what it's trying to do. But because of this space here, it has to be treated differently. And we had these long back and forths and conversations. And eventually it just got to that person writing the kind of stories they want to write more effectively, better, and in ways that work with the medium we're using. But it took a lot of talking and then explaining to the other person what was intended by the writer, all this stuff. So there's this huge, for me, it was just explaining and translating what people were thinking and trying to do so everyone could still interact and communicate as intended. No one there was trying to be rude. Everyone was trying to be happy and have a great time. So how do we get there? And that's what I worked on. Yay!
Yeah, that's
But
definitely a lot
yeah,
of
do you have
responsibility.
anything specific like that? Yeah. But yeah, it
Uh,
was a lot of responsibility, and I didn't have to take it on. But yeah, go ahead and tell me any experiences you sort of had where you really did something to work towards helping the community out or building it up when you had to or felt like you needed to.
well, for me personally, I didn't have like, I don't know if I'd say I had like big, huge responsibility moments like you did. I'm not really, I don't think I ever was put in that type of position, which I definitely do respect the fact that how much responsibility you did took, even though you didn't have to. I'd say like any sort of community contributions that I work towards would be more focused on trying to make people feel included in things. And I try to do this in like any community that I'm in. If I see someone who seems to be on their lonesome or, is wondering like what to do or is lost, you just really need someone to talk to and like give them a little push into, doing things. I do like to talk to those people and, give them some advice or like help them out with whatever they're working on. Or I guess in different cases, in different communities, um, I like to just interact with just interaction alone is definitely enough to get someone thinking like, hey, I'm not alone here. I can definitely do more things than I feel like I can do. And I definitely wish, that type of help was there for me when I at least first entered the CRC. That uh, sort of interaction, like, hey, you don't gotta do everything. There's gonna be people here you can talk to that'll help you with things. And I kind of wish I had that for myself, and because I didn't have that for myself, unfortunately. I wanted to be that person who would, be
Uh,
there for other people and say like, hey, uh, I'm here to help.
yeah.
I want to talk. If you want to do things, we can try to do things together. I definitely did that in the NPC community, which is like, another branch of another OC community branch from 555. Anytime I saw like people doing something, I always instantly went and I saw like no interaction. I always instantly went and like, hey, what's going on? What are you guys doing? You both in character or out of character. I try to put myself there as someone who people can just, talk to and uh, kind of like expect to be there and for help and, any sort of interaction. And I definitely did see like some people, uh, grow and become better at things because I'm definitely proud of those types of people. But I definitely wouldn't say that I had all
Um,
the work that you did, but I tried my best to make the community a pretty much a better place in any community that I'm in.
yeah, that's the goal. Like, however you go about improving it, it doesn't have to be a big moment. Sometimes it's literally just enough little things that make a difference. Like if someone like I tried playing in a few Minecraft role play server things and stuff, but no one really gave me the time of day. I had maybe one person who would have like a positive interaction with me, and others would be like, what? So for me, that really meant like, okay, I don't really, just not really a space for me or a spot for me in here, and I'd try a few days, and if it stayed like that, I'd be like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm doing incorrectly. Because I tried there, I try on a little Discord and stuff, and if there was, if no one really came out that like helped me or direct me or anything, it would lead to me leaving the community. Yes, I'm trying to find a place where I can, interact with people regularly and have a good time. And if I'm just going to be ignored the whole time, I want to find somewhere else where I can actually interact and be helpful or useful or anything. So yeah, definitely when people are joining your community or trying out, spending a few minutes to talk with them, help them out, uh, not necessarily just say, hey man, do whatever you want or whatever. It's like, if you do something like, oh, well, yeah, why don't you come with me while I'm doing this thing over here or something, or hang out with us for a bit, we're gonna do this thing, or, oh, well, I was gonna do this tomorrow, but we can do that right now, and I can take you over there to see them, learn a little bit about that. So any sort of little moment of helping someone out like that is great. Even if you just go like, oh, well, someone over here had a little request thingy, go check that out. Da, da, da. It's a lot better than just saying, hey, do whatever, or I don't care. It's basically how it comes out feeling. But to say, hey, there's a lot you can do. Maybe this, or this is something you should try out. I'm willing to join you in any of those things. But if you don't have the time or anything like that, maybe you can say, hey, this person might, or, oh, do you want to do something tomorrow with that? Da, 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 da. Basically just, if you're at community, finding the time or opportunity to help someone, especially a newbie, to get situated and figure out their bearings is a wonderful thing and can go a long way for people. Like, the CRC is a really good example of that. And there's a lot of moments like that, but especially for me, of where I don't have the time, space, or commitment, but I see someone else who might. So I would be like, oh, and direct people to each other. So one of the big moments I had of doing a tiny thing that I felt helped a lot was Tato, who it's Nora admin, was making a story line that took place in an area about a concept that someone else had explored previously within like the month, you know? So I directed the person who it was really weird to say. I was like, oh, I know someone who's interacted with this before and they might know. And then I pinged them and I, send that person a message like, hey, someone's, doing the unique arc about sort of thing that you've covered before. Why don't you like go and chat and, interact, and maybe there's something more you can do with that. And that is what got myself, Kato, this Nora admin, and Pyru like interacting, and while doing like 2 or so big stories together, and really had a great time. But just by directing people who had done something similar to each other, sort of check out what each other are doing, led to a bunch of fun interactions. And so like this months of interaction and fun that we all had, thanks to that one little moment where I noticed someone was doing something. And I'm like, oh, hey, someone else did something on this. You should talk. Wow. So yeah, those little moments make a big difference in helping a community, especially when it's with new people or fresher faces, or, the community itself is brand new and just starting out. But when it's been around a long time, the little helps can do a big thing in preventing new people from leaving, before they give it a real opportunity. I think that's all I really got on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice to hear that. That you've done that. You definitely are like a pretty big important person in this community. Even if you don't like, aren't as insanely active as you used to be, you definitely have kind of made your place here in this community. You definitely are someone that I'm sure a lot of people respect and admire because you're a pretty positive person and you definitely do
Yeah.
try to find the best in, finding solutions.
Yeah, I try. I try really hard. s- there's like, oh, I don't know if you know about how it was for me at the beginning in the CRC. What had how my sort of journey into that happened and how weird it was, or not.
I'm not sure. I don't
Yeah.
think you told me
Ugh.
anything.
Fine. So it was really weird for me because like a few months prior, I had given Twitter the second try. I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this again. And within a few days, I was like kicked off I was chased out of the of Twitter space, and it was like, okay, I'm never touching Twitter again. I tried. It's not what it once was and everything, and it's a bad space now. I'm never touching it again. And then my little brother was like, hey, have you seen this? This seems so you. And they'd sent me like this video that someone did about the CRC. And I was like, no, I haven't seen this. I don't know what this is. And they're like, you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it. So I wound up watching a video about it and stuff. And I was like, oh, this is really, really cool. And I'm like, yeah, you should like read it and do all this stuff and like interact. And I think you'd love it. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. That seems awesome. This seems like a wonderful thing. This is comics, but it's like different and interactable and everything. Since the comic community died, I was like, whoa, this is gonna be so exciting. It's the future of the comic book industry. Like, but finally it's coming back in this new way. And they told me it was on Twitter. And I was like, nah, I think not, maybe no. And they convinced me over and over, like, no, you should really do it. So what I did was I grabbed my this is before ChatGPT, by the way. I grabbed my AI account. I had made this stupid little AI for the sole purpose of creating like D&D rooms for people in the OSR community. That's all it did. It existed on Twitter because before I ever made a social media account on Twitter, I thought it was just a place people made AI and interacted with AI. That's all I knew about it. So when I was talking with OSR people, I was like, hey, what would be useful and stuff? I'm going to build a little AI thing for the Twitter space. And they said something I would make rooms would be useful, like not layouts, but specific things in the rooms. So I did that. And, I made something that would be like, hey, it's like, oh, the veneer of the room is like, exposed to the light in such a way where you can see this arcane rune on here. But they give all these specific, super hyper detailed little things to fit within the Twitter space. And I took that account and I said, all right, I'm going to just remove all the stuff from that. Everyone who was using it got all the use out of it they're going to get. So I did that whole process, which was a little annoying back then, but doable. There might be like 5 instances of what it was typing left, but like basically I cleared it with what I could do. And then I was like, okay, stopping the AI from running this thing, and I just took over to where I would use it for interacting with the CRC. And that's all I really did with that. And then after a little bit, like I don't know how long, I was thinking like a full month or so, the CRC stuff started talking back to me. And I was like, that's bizarre as hell. Like, what the hell's going on? And that's around the time I learned that 555 was like a big company thing. Then I started interacting with other things, not just Conspiracy Research Club, but PRC and AME. And, I started interacting with those. And then I got a private message from Patricia about something or whatever, and we talked a little bit there. It was just super simple. They may ask me if, like in private messaging, if I had a portrait made of me, what kind of ears would I have? And gave like a few examples. And I told them what I'd have. I was just honest about it and stuff. And I was like, these are weird, but whatever. I'm just going to answer them as honestly as I can. Okay. And eventually that led to a private message coming my way from the Trisha account, which asked me if I wanted to like preview something that was coming up and, if I'd not talk about it, if I did, and so like do a little NDA thing and stuff. And I was like, I hate NDAs. Like for the life of me, I hate anything that says you can't talk about it. But I was like, okay, I'll sign. I don't think it's going to be anything illegal or anything like that in their stuff. So I'm not going to become like a whistleblower if I talk about it, if there's something weird, you know. And I go and I check out the thing. And what it was like a long video thing where they were talking about the upcoming CRC project and what they wanted to do with it. And they had like their idea of how they were going to monetize it so people could make money from it. It's like, yeah, we have this whole tier system that'll lead people up and eventually they'll turn into like Patricia itself, where they're running their own kind of thing and they're making this much money at doing all this other stuff. And I was looking at this and I went, oh my God, this is Jurassic Park. Oh Lord. And what that meant, like this is Jurassic Park, means is if something's like Jurassic Park, it means that each individual one thing about it, each aspect, has a plethora of compounding problems. So I saw on their economic scale stuff there, all these different areas where there are compounding problems that would branch out from each one of these sort of things. So when I got to the end and got to talk to them, because they did give me like a 20-minute chat where at the top, I said, yeah, this whole thing's great and stuff, but the economics side, all this is Jurassic Park. And then I explained what I meant by that. I was like, is it okay if I go into all the details about why, like how this will lead to people coming in from outside your community to siphon money out of it and not bring it back in and actually break down your community or all these other things? And they were like, yeah, sure, go ahead. We appreciate any the advice or help stuff you can give us. This is all new. We're new territory. And I was like, yeah, I can tell. So I went through and I spent, I don't even know, it was definitely more than a half hour. It was supposed to be like 20 minutes going into all this information with them. So then, afterwards it's like, yeah, thank you. And I was like, yeah, no, thank you. This has been great. I'm super excited for your project. And they say it's going to be really cool. And I just figured that was that done, and so I just go about my business doing what I normally do. And then a little while later, it was like a month or so, I got an invite from Patricia admin again, if I wanted to go into like a project thing and stuff there, but like it would be under NDA while we were getting going until like, whatever date or whatever. Like we just weren't supposed to talk about it. Even after it was done with NDAs, we weren't supposed to be like chatting about it while stuff's going until the company was like, yeah, we're good to go. And they keep explaining it now and stuff, So I was like, okay, cool. And I went into that and it was a whole like thing. It was, hey, we're doing that CRC project that we did. We've made some changes. We've done all this stuff. You guys have really, and there was like 6 or 7 different people there. It was quite a few. And they were like, hey, you guys have been big parts of the community lately, and you've been doing all this stuff, whether it's been over a long period of time or recently. And we think you all have the personal responsibility where, with everything put together, you'll be able to be people who know a little bit more and can help direct people around if stuff gets weird, because they changed the economic system to not be upfront, which I felt was very important, because if they said, hey, if you do this, you'll get like $200 or we'll pay for an art piece or whatever out the gate, I was like, here's all these different people going to come in to steal your money and how they're going to do it. So they had that sort of like hidden and stuff, but they let us know who were there that like, yes, that stuff's still in effect. And if people do these things, they'll do that. And there's a silent like tier system, which is based off of things like interactions and, people reposting your stuff and all these different things. And, like, hey, what about, does it promote the community and other people in there? And there's like a weird point system. I didn't really care how that system worked, but it existed and we got to know that it did. And it was like, okay, cool. And so I was there and it was basically, hey, you guys get to test some features before they're out. Like the character creator PFP, we got to try that before it was done. And be like, what's it missing or needing? And I was like, it needs more dark skin. Like there's not enough, it's like one color. So, so they branched it out a little bit more and they worked on a few other things and changed some other things up. Everyone was giving really good opinions about it. So we got to do that and we got to chat with people and they're like, hey, does everyone who was here was putting in all this effort helping them out? We essentially got to be the first of their monetary tiers out the gate. So what that meant was like once a month or whatever, they would pay for a singular art piece for us as long as we had like a storyline we were doing that, they could build an art piece for and we get to talk to the artist directly and there's all this stuff. And it was very hodgepodge, just quickly thrown together. But we were there basically as the test subjects for how the systems worked. But we didn't get to know anything special, weird, cool insider stuff. It was just, we got things a little bit ahead of time. And then because we were so, professional about what we were doing, we all got to start at what people would get into if they did a good job in the community. Like if they were doing really good, and we had like a month or two of viewing them doing the great stuff, and they're not like, well, I said everything's nice, but secretly in DMs, I'm saying, I'll insert evil thing here. As long as nothing like that's going on, they would get promoted up to this tier where the CRC would pay for them to have an art piece made or stuff like that. And if they do really good there, then they could move on to this other tier, etc. There's a whole thing like that. And we were the ones who were a part of the normal community who essentially got to hear about this stuff and, react to it before it became public knowledge. And the whole reason for that was to check if things were weird or to test drive things and stuff like that. It was no like super insider mega ultra thing. But people did think that for a bit. It was weird. So I had that. And the way everyone was interacting, especially when we got to making characters and stuff, I felt like I had screwed up. Like there is this big overwhelming feeling that the only reason I was there was because I showed up so fast, I felt, before this happened. I felt the only reason I was there was because I helped out economically and prevented them from losing money. So for me, it was, oh, my character's a mess up. Everything I'm doing here is like a mess up. No one's like saying things. And there's this whole shipping thing going on where they ship everyone's characters with each other and stuff before it even started. But my character never got shipped. And I was like, but she's a dork up on. She's such a cute opportunity. Why is no one shipping her with anything or whatever? What's going on here? I don't understand that. And she was the only of that first group. She was the only dark skinned character. So I had this assumption like, oh no, maybe that was the problem. I don't know. Uh-oh. Is that an issue? I don't think so, but is it? Like, I had that sort of like thought, oh, there's like, is that what was wrong? Or, I don't know. Did I do something else? Is it the way she talks? Or, how all these things? Because, the way she talked, like when I first showed up, I would only type on the computer. So there's this whole thing where I only type on the computer. So everything looks really nice and neat because that's where my hands work really good. My hands are messed up. So on the phone, it looks pretty bad. So I came up with a way of giving my character a unique voice by combining the fact my hands are messed up with some accenting based off of some of the cultures I know in the way that they speak. So it created this Zarza voice, which, for me was a very low kind of voice and a very like serious people voice, but in a way where it sounds kind of fun. Way everyone else heard it was like silly and hyper and all this other stuff, which is like, that's not what I'm picturing, but okay. So I thought I messed up a lot. So I spent a lot of my time there being like, if I am messing up, and I'm only here out of obligation to keep someone who helped them monetarily around, I'm gonna make sure I get every single person who deserves to be recognized, noticed, and up there, and like into these tiers where they're making money. Because like this is the future of comics, is how I saw it. And I'm like, I want to support this. I miss my old communities, so they're gone now. I want to build this. I'll help build this up. So I spent a long time there with that. That's my like whole reasoning for still being around and doing stuff. But yeah, so I had that sort of like chip on my shoulder type of thing of where I have to do something. Well, the fact I'm here is enough where I gotta help out. You know. So yeah, that was what was going on with me in the early days. So yeah.
I know, I get what you're saying. That's kind of how I felt, to be honest. Like, um, I was kind of just, I was in the CRC for a bit, obviously, and like I said before, and then I left, because of reasons and whatnot. I guess like the main reason was I feel like I wasn't really able to be involved in things, so I left because of that. So that's in the past, but yeah. At some point, randomly, in the next couple of like a couple months later, the other account, uh, the Eddie account, um, another comic, just randomly DM me like saying like, hey, you want to be like, part of some sort of group or something, or like, like kind of similar situation to you, I guess, but this time they're kind of just choosing people.
So yeah.
Um, and I kind of felt, I guess, the similar sort of thing that you felt like, hey, I'm kind of lucky to be in this right now. Um, knowing some other, if I can remember some other circumstances, actually I was really lucky to be in this because I think there was one other person that was actually chosen before me, but they had to leave because of some other circumstances, so I just happened to be like the next person in the slot. So yeah, no, and then when I got into that and I was put in a sort of weird position of, like you said, like not really a position of power, but like it could be perceived that way. And I kind of felt like, I guess, this is sort of the same thing. Like I have kind of a responsibility to help others feel like, they belong here because, I got lucky enough to be in this position. And I feel like, I should use this position responsibly. Like, I guess to quote like this, the Spider-Man movie, great power comes great responsibility. I just felt like, you know, I'm in this position, I should try to help out. I should try to, help people feel included. I don't want to have people go through and feel the same thing that I did when I first joined the CRC for a while, thinking like, there's not really much I can do. I don't think anyone really cares about me here. And I really try to make best to make sure that, pretty much what you did. I want to make sure everyone's feeling included because I don't want anyone to really feel the things that I did. But I definitely do admire and respect your decision to do that. That even though you're like you didn't have to do all that with helping people feel involved, including stuff. You still did it because you didn't want people to be feeling that way, and I really respect that. It's really nice.
Yeah. And I'm glad you told me you had a similar experience. I honestly did not know that you did. So you get it. And I'm at any time that you're in some sort of weird position like that, taking the initiative and, seeing it as a reason to help others as opposed to being like, haha, I'm lucky, lol, or whatever. That's really respectful. So I didn't even know that. Thank you. And I appreciate you did that for them. The Eddie community had a lot of weird things going on, but, most of them were fun and interesting. And I'm glad to see that you were like, you got to see this perspective I did while you were still helping out that community and being a big part of it. Because I knew you were doing another part, that you were there, you were helping out, but I didn't know that you were in the same sort of boat I was of like, oh, I get to see a little bit behind the curtain, but it doesn't mean I know what's going on.
Yeah, kind of was a weird position. Now I look back on it, you know, seeing a little bit of stuff, not knowing a whole lot, but it's like, hey, you're in somewhat of a weird but cool position, and I'm like, yeah, okay. Looking back at it, it was kind of weird to be honest that, I didn't really know much, but I knew just enough, so it was still, I felt, regardless, I still felt like I had to do something to, help.
Yeah. There is, so since we're on the subject of like the CRC and everything like that and how the communities were going, there was a moment where myself and sort of everyone else that dropped the ball when we knew better. Um, yeah. So there was this point in time where Ben had done something I felt was a bad decision, which was he got that Merriweather involved in stuff again. And when I heard that happen, I did ask a few questions. And I was like, well, what is the purpose of them being here? What are they helping with? Like, that I need to know, Ben. I'm gonna use my my access to you on this one. I need to know, like, what is going on there? I don't normally have chances with you. I don't want this person doing certain things. I want to know, well, what are they doing? And what I got to hear was that Merriweather would be teaching about how the VTubing stuff and all these other things worked, so they could really get going on their own programs and other stuff they were doing to try to make that accessible via things like TikTok and phone applications and stuff like that, so they can make their own things to help new people who wanted to explore the space that way. And I was like, oh, well, that seems fine. He's a Catboy VTuber now, and he seems to know what he's doing in that regard. So that makes sense. But, they did, I don't know the exact specifics. Let's see, like 3 different ways it's described as having going down, and I wasn't able to talk to Ben about it specifically because he wound up losing his leg and everything like that. So, he was obviously busy. Just like when I had my surgery for cancer, I was obviously busy. No one could talk to me about anything. Um, so there was this thing that happened where our Merriweather got to decide a plot event that would happen. Basically, the reasons and behind it, I don't know. But essentially, hey, we're gonna do an apocalypse and reset the setting, and everything that you did and then the stuff you made don't matter. So that was what happened. And when that got announced by Ben and everything like that, like a bunch of us had this who were in that space had this like, oh, Dad, if that's what we're doing, I guess, sort of attitude. And like 1 or 2 of us were excited about it because they were like, woo, we're excited, man. But I was like, this is very bad. And the reason why I was going, this is very bad, is because this scenario happened twice in the comics industry and killed the comics industry each time it happened. So this happened with Infinite Crisis on Infinite Earths the first time. That's what they did. And that's exactly what they did. And that instantly turned Marvel into a loss leader. But instantly, it happened like almost overnight, and like half of the fan base was gone after the event happened, and all of the stuff. Like it was just boom, insane. And then DC did the same thing, or it's the other way around. I don't even remember anymore. It's been so long, but yeah, as wham, then they died and became a loss leader. And I was like, what the hell? And the only thing you can do with loss leaders is use them as IP farms or get rid of them. That's really it. That's all they do. So the comics industry just in the US became just IP farms that no one cared about because they were just losing money constantly. Because that's what a loss leader is. You generate zero money. You lose money constantly. As what makes you a loss leader. So the US comics team is constantly using lots and lots and lots of money, making $0 no matter how much they sold, and it can make no money. They only lose money. So it was all just like who's buying it to use the IPs and all that other stuff, and that was it. And Ben had made the decision to do the exact same thing to the CRC. And it had the exact same effect. Except there is one thing different. So when everything died for Ben and everything with the CRC, they lost all their money and everything. They didn't instantly become loss leaders. Instead, they basically just went into a state right next to bankruptcy, where they have Ben and like the Brazilian studio that did animation, and that's all that's left of the company. Everything else is gone, sold, kaput. That's why FD is no longer a moderator, anything like that. Everything's gone except for those two assets, which is the owner himself and one art studio. Yeah, that's from a company that was getting ready to create VTubers, add software for VTubers, hardware for VTubers, to create an anime, to get all this other stuff going. They were really at that point and they died overnight. Yeah. So that happened, and it also triggered one member of our community to have a heart attack. And, that they had to have their surgery to replace their heart, which someone else was going to have organ replacement surgery before that to sort of motivate him. It really hit the whole community insanely bad. And I was under NDA not to talk about the things I knew behind the scenes. So I couldn't do too much because I actually respect an oath as I make one. Like, the only time I'll make one to lie is to protect a life, and that's it. That's just basically it. Yeah. So it devastated the community, and everything sort of fell apart. But we kept trying for a bit, to make things work and get people going. And I had this commitment where, for me, I wasn't gonna walk away entirely, disappear, until I knew the community could sustain itself and survive. I needed to expand. I just needed to survive. If it could do that and still promote each other, help each other out, then I could walk away and, shield complete. And I got there. And so I did. And then Sakura herself, one who had the heart replacement surgery, and I talked and whatnot, and that convinced me to come back to the state where I'm at now, where I still hang out, I still chat a bit and stuff, but I'm not so invested. I'll go onto Twitter and read some of the stories and everything, and I'll talk to people in the Discord about things and be like, yeah, and you're doing such a great job, but I'm not sticking around or really focused on it. I'll try and do my own thing instead. Yeah, because it did that to me. It betrayed me where the community that was my biggest, online community, or even just, in a city, I could go and talk to these people if I was there and have a decent time, have a place to belong when I have nowhere and my people have nowhere. I could at least have somewhere to be. That got taken from me. And then when I had it again on the internet, it got taken the same way. So that was big and annoying. I'll leave it at that. But I'm still there helping. And yeah. Yeah, your turn. Yay! So you got more to talk about on this subject?
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, like, all that happened that, like, you went and, yeah, I didn't realize it was really that bad until, like, a long while later, because I was more, like, kind of spectating this really, at least to the CRC, because we were kind of just doing our own thing, NPC stuff, and things kind of just died, and we sort of just took it, I guess. Um, but we only really just saw what was going on in the CRC, and it was kind of really confusing at the time, to be honest. Um, I heard that there might have been different plans. I don't know. Plans fall through, and unfortunately, this was just one that just really fell through. I really wish we could just hear what happened and whatnot. Honestly, like we mentioned earlier, honesty and trust is pretty important to a community. And I guess, to add on to that, openness is definitely something too. So I kind of wish like there was more openness and honesty, um, so we could at least get to know like what was going on and why did things happen. But, you know, it is what it is, to be honest. Honestly,
Yeah.
at this point,
Yeah, and this is the
I'm
first
all up
time
for
this
just
was tried
move
with the
forward.
community.
Yeah, I feel like there wasn't that much
Yes.
planning, to be honest. I feel like there should have been more planning.
Okay. Yeah, so definitely, since this was the first time any of this was really going on or happening, I feel that anyone who looks back at the CRC and 555 as a company, there's so much to learn from this to where people who try something similar in the future are going to be able to do it much more effectively. And that includes 555. The company didn't become a loss leader, it just barely exists. So there's a chance that they come back and actually earn their place again. And I'm really excited if they do. Like, Ben's been great to talk to. He really believes in all the settings and has done his best. But he understands now where Merriweather came from, where he, snipping threads and cutting things, because that's how Ben wound up in charge of the CRC in the first place was. Merriweather said, you don't make enough money, you don't matter, goodbye, snap. Good riddance, I don't need you. And Ben was like, hey, whoa, can I keep this thing running and do stuff with it? And there was like, I guess. That's basically how that went. I The exact specifics changed on who you asked, but that's essentially it. There was a conversation, and Ben wound up getting to keep it and try to do something with it. And he made it profitable. And then, of course, when Merriweather came back, his own input wound up being part of, because it wasn't just solitary on its own, but part of what brought it down. Um, yeah, so it's I know it's not intended because like I've heard people talk to Merriweather. I've seen him out there doing things and stuff, and he does intend the best for everybody. It just sucks that the thing that he gave up on in the past when he puts in input, it wound up leading to its dying. I know, and I don't know how he put in input exactly or any of that stuff. There's so many ways it's said and looked at online. And I don't think you can trust Ben or Merriweather themselves to accurately describe how things went down because it's been so long for them and they definitely have their own way of how they interpreted whatever was going on. So you don't have a proper log, so we just have to go, that happened, past is the past. That's it. Yeah. I really feel it's not a opportunity to blame people or anything like that, as much as I want to just like blame Merriweather and say, oh, they're a terrible person. I don't like them. Like, I still don't like them, but that's because, Sakura got hurt indirectly because of the decision they made, and they never said any formal apology about what happened. So, in my heart of hearts, I will always despise them for that. But, they might even know that it happened. So, yeah, other than that, though, their decisions and stuff, they probably just honestly made what they thought was a helpful decision and input. But I don't know. And I refuse to care. It's the past. The thing that's important, I guess, as the takeaway is that even if a community is devastated by something like this, there's definitely a right and a wrong way to react. And the way the comics industry reacted in the US, where they said, screw you, and the fans in kind said, screw you, was not quite the proper way to react because it destroyed them. Whereas what we wanted was them to return to form and, be who they're supposed to be, do what they're supposed to do. So it's definitely a different kind of reaction that needed to happen. But, what happened did. And with the CRC, the reaction that happened was closer because the 555 is not a loss leader. They still exist as a company. And there's potentially a future there. The fan base still exists and they still want to do things and be creative and, all these things with the space. Like, Kato is working on a webtoon. One of the main artists for 555, who is now, free, they're doing their own thing, is making some sort of webtoon novel thing with there's like 3 or 4 other people who were in there who they really interacted with in the space, I'm trying to do this VTuber thing and, make TTRPGs and this other stuff and write books. That's what I'm trying to get to. I'm just, stuck also dealing with all this insane work to keep my house. But, and the cancer. But yeah, other than that, we're all still trying to do this creative fun things and still be a community, talk to the people who you like some there, or at least, check in on people and see how they're doing. So there's that. And I think that's a much better, closer to appropriate reaction to when a community is devastated. Like, we gotta figure things out and how to be better about that and to try to get things where we want to be. Like, American comics, I think if we had, like, when we abandoned them, if we'd done that and we'd started doing something immediately, we made our own comics, it might have forced those companies to actually, sell the company instead of turning it to an IP farm to someone who was, running a new upstarting company in the same field, who then would have had access to IPs and been able to fix what was messed up. Something. It's taken us too long to get there. So, now we have people like Eric D. July who are up there, but they had formed up right out the gate. I think we have been able to save Marvel and DC from being lost leaders just forever. And maybe we had got good comics back. But, the looking back at stuff is only useful if you build it into actions for the future. So, with what happened with CRC, I see a lot more people being like, okay, something bad happened to my community. I'm going to do something creative about it. And that's a lot better solution than what we were doing before. And we still want to support and help out 555 if and when we can, as opposed to just dropping them like, bloop. So it's better. I think as a community, and then we're building ones out online, building a space where the community itself can help or even fix the problems we see with whatever we rallied around, whether it's a company or a character or just a fun little thing we all made up together. We are playing Minecraft and we made Shark Squad, and then Shark Squad becomes a big crazy community and stuff, whatever. If we're able to keep that community alive, we can keep what actually matters about it going, even if the official support goes away. Like with Minecraft, there's this whole thing where Minecraft's going strong and they have mods and stuff, but then they make this whole announcement where they say, any mod that has guns or sexy stuff or any of that, screw you. We hate you. Get out of here. You don't belong here. And that came up and they listed a few specific ones. And the communities reacted in general better. Like there were those who rallied around some of the ones who were called out, like some of the Call of Duty style gun game things. I don't really pay attention to them, but they're doing strong and have even built their own games that aren't Minecraft anymore. Where those communities have now gone to this, new game franchise that's built. The those who are into the NSFW mods and stuff really rallied around one, and it's got a lot of money and all this other stuff, and it's making its own thing, and it's basically become an animation studio, which is kind of cool, but it's all that direction. And then the super survivalist type of players and stuff, um, they had a weird thing happen where they just, after this announcement, they said, well, it's a pain in the butt to mod Minecraft anyway. And we've been working really hard to make these super intense mods where you can, like, nape stones and all this other stuff. How about we just make our own game? And they did. Like, Vintage Story exists, and so do these other games that have been made just from that. And I feel that's a great way for those communities that have built up in a space to survive, even when they're no longer supported. Like, as people online, if we really love a community, we need to try to get it to that kind of area where it can support itself even when official support disappears or, accidentally betrays us. Because they don't normally want to betray you. And if they do, yeah, wow, that's a major issue. Like what? So, yeah, that's what I think. And there's definitely skills you want to build up in a community to get them there. Like if you're from a gaming space and whatnot, building up coding stuff skills for, story design skills might be an important thing to help you get your games to survive, or the way you play to survive, even when the game you're playing changes radically. If you're in a story writing space or like a role playing space, there's definitely skills there that you need to promote within your community to ensure the community itself can survive even when there's major disasters preventing it from functioning the way it should. That's all I got there. Yeah.
I pretty much agree with you on that. Whether I think like maybe this community can like restart and do better, maybe, but we kind of just have. It's just a matter of time. Just see if things can be fixed. But to be honest, I do like where it is now. I mean, obviously it was better at a certain point, but it's fine at the current position where people are kind of just doing their own thing and everyone's kind of chill with each other and whatnot.
Yeah, we all vibing.
It is nice to see all the new creative stuff
Okay.
that people come up with, and both here and like you said, other communities and other studio, other games and stuff like that. It is nice to see like the creativity that people come up with when they do have like limits placed on.
Yeah. So I think the next thing we wanted to talk about was internet culture and stuff, and sort of how that works. Give me a minute. Okie dokie. Uh, Meow. So okay, we should be back now. Yay! Woo! First edited video that goes into the stuff. Yeah, first edited podcast episode with the person. We both had to step away for a while. We're back. We're ready for tomorrow. So, our second topic for the day was the timing of that. That's funny. Internet cultures and stuff like that. Yay! So, this is one of the topics you want to talk about. Do you want to take the lead on that?
Yeah, sure. I guess something we could start on is like, I guess a good general culture of the internet. Um, it's definitely an interesting place. I can say that for the least. It's, I mean, that's really a good way of just summarizing the whole like internet culture, like it's interesting. There's like a lot of things going on. It's yeah, I mean there's I have a lot of like I guess issues with how the internet culture is, but you know, it's kind of something we all gotta deal with, I guess, nowadays, especially with everyone being connected and whatnot. It's definitely a lot of good things, but with all the good things, there always have to be a lot of bad things alongside with
Yeah. Yeah, I find that to be the case. Like, the internet is very big, very open, but also weirdly closed off in certain areas. So I think it's a very strange place and intriguing to talk about. So I think since we're gonna cover it, we should probably split it up into sections where we talk about little tidbits of internet culture or sections of it or areas we've noticed something specifics are going on. Um, I'll go ahead and I guess I'll need start. So a big opening place and whatnot for the internet is like Wikipedia. For a lot of people, whether you care about the internet or don't, Wikipedia is something you know about it and something that even if you don't have internet access, you can have. Like Wikipedia is like 10 gigabytes. It's something ridiculously small like that. You can grab it and download it and have it. And there are different versions from different years that are available for just grabbing and having on the go if you need Wikipedia for anything. But if you use the version on the internet, not only do you have the Wikipedia articles themselves, you have the previous versions of them and all of this sort of stuff there and information about when it got changed, who changed it, all this other stuff. And I think that's really fascinating. But Wikipedia itself is weird. For example, you know, uh, I own a copy of a really old game called, I don't know the name of it anymore. A Dominant Species. There you go, that name. That's called Dominant Species. I own the game. I have the rule books. I have the instruction books. I have all this other stuff. Now, way back when, I got one of my buddies to log me into Wikipedia so I could, use their account to try and edit the article about dominant species because it was very lackluster and didn't have information that, I wanted to look up about the game when I was feeling back to look up the game. So I was like, oh, I have the books, I found them and everything. We're going here, edit it, put some of this information in there, and then, it'll be available for people. So we did all the work to do that. We put it all in, and within 10 minutes, the version of editing and stuff that I'd done was gone. It had been cleared away, and it was back to what it was like before. That was the first time I encountered that, no one really has access to editing Wikipedia. I just figured it was like anyone could edit, and you would get to have, like, if your stuff was fine or whatever, it'd be there. But the edits I did never came back in. None of the information I put down of any sort ever made it back into the article about dominant species. That was when I first learned that this was weirder than I thought it was. And I was like, huh, that's very strange. So what I did not understand about Wikipedia is one, no one wants you editing it. They don't. Even though it's free for anyone that edits, no one wants you editing it at all. There's these people who edit it. They don't want anyone else touching it. Whatever, screw you, it's sort of their idea. So there's that. Number two, they don't want you changing it with information that is from other languages. So, for example, if there's a really shitty article on Wikipedia about, say, Hugo Chavez, which there is, it's dog shit and very bad. They have that in English. If you look at it in Spanish, the Spanish article is better. It has more like real things going on, proper dating on information, and it's less worded like, oh, he's a good guy, da da da. It's more just neutral in its statements. Whereas the English version tries to make him look good for some weird reason. The Spanish version just states facts like they're facts, without any sort of weird guidance. Even though most Spanish people despise Hugo Chavez. So it's surprisingly well put together. But if you go and like translate the Spanish version or have someone else do so and put that factual information onto the Wikipedia in English, it'll be gone within a second and no one's even going to look at it or try to fix it or talk about it in any little signature and open up to chat about nothing. So there's a whole thing like that with Wikipedia. It's very weird. However, there's a sort of loophole around that. And the loophole that exists is creating your own website or wiki page and filling that with information about the subject. You know, and then you make your own, like, wiki is its own thing from Wikipedia, but it's basically what you think Wikipedia is. But you can sort of more personably lock it down and stuff if you want to, and it's a little weird. But you can make one of those, or you make your own website, whatever, with all the information. And then you can go in and like link it to Wikipedia. And, you know, you might put one little piece of information in there and stuff. And while it will be torn away in a second, ripped out of there, it might wind up part of discussions within the Wikipedia itself, and the link back to that area might be restored. That's the one thing I've seen where if you want to actually edit Wikipedia or anything like that, that's the way of going about it. And then later down the road, you might see information that was on that website or that wiki you made moved to there by the people who are on Wikipedia doing that. Yeah, so that's a thing. You know, a lot of people like to just think it's this magical place you go in and edit freely and whatever, but it's not really what it's advertised as. It's different. And a lot of the different big sources of information on the internet are like that, where they're touted as this free, open, anybody comes in, writes, says anything. But in reality, there's so many checks and balances within it that it doesn't do what it says it does. I mean, it still functions, but not for what you're thinking. So Wikipedia is great for quickly checking some things, grabbing an article or two, and that's about it. But you know, sometimes that's exactly what you need. So a lot of places on the net, they're like that, where they're different than what they've seen. Yeah. So that's really one of the things about internet culture where I just want to mention they feel a lot more open and like you would just get started, do things, be like, oh, well, I'm going to make an article about how, you know, Spanish hair is treated in salons and this stuff. But that's not really how that place works. Some things will disappear and change on you really fast. So yeah, I figured that was worth mentioning. Like a lot of places like Wikipedia and similar places work in such a fashion. For me, I found for a long time that I would be someone who donated to Wikipedia for a good while when I was doing well economically. I would help out at some like $10 a year or something like that, you know, depending on how much I used it, if I used it at all. And there's some years where I'd never even touched the place, you know, so I didn't even bother sending me donations because I was like, oh, I'm not using it, you know. But I found out that barely anyone who uses the website sends anybody their way. So I was like, oh, weird. But remembering my own experience of how it was when I tried editing it with actual information about something, all the loops I had to go to do so, I understand why a lot of people don't send money their way. They might have had a similar experience or, you know, something else equally weird and decided this doesn't feel quite like what it's supposed to be, and so sort of backed off from it. I know there's a lot of people who feel that way, and especially among like people who aren't properly represented on it. There's a lot of feelings like that, whether you're, I knew or Danae or, so many other people's where what's written on a place like that about you or your group and stuff isn't written by any one of you and is instead just written about you. There's there's a big contempt for it there because if you go in and try to edit with some factual things, you'll see stuff change. Like for the longest time, they're just getting the Navajo page to mention that they called themselves Dene was like that was a struggle. That was the struggle and a half. So yeah, there's a lot of ones like that. And if it were bought by somebody, it'd be much worse. Because if you look at, for example, in the US, we have political parties. If someone in the Democrats, for example, had bought Wikipedia, it wouldn't acknowledge the Aleut as a nation or a people. And the reason why I specify that is whenever we've had political speakers go to Alaska or talk about us, the Aleuts are always just sort of kicked out of the conversation. And we've actually had people, including presidential candidates, go, who? The what? And stuff when we mention the Aleut. They don't even know who they are. They don't know about any of their contributions to science, let alone, NASA specifically. And it's wacky. It's ridiculous. So keeping a place like Wikipedia, even though it's weird, out of the hands of like politicians or anyone who's like a big spender or a company or a corporation is very important. And I think more people who've gotten use out of it should donate to keep it free of that. But sure, it's weird, but I know factually it would get weirder and dumber in any of those people's hands. Yeah. All about you. Do you have a specific amount or area you want to talk about, or do you have something to say in the subject?
Well, I guess you were talking about Wikipedia and stuff. I definitely do like agree. Like their system can be a bit weird sometimes, and honestly, I feel like Wikipedia is more just like a place where you can just go and like quickly grab any sort of information if you need. Um, and I feel like other than that, maybe survival information. I feel like that's pretty. You can't really have biased survival information, like how to make a fire or something. But other than that, I suppose, yeah, there's always gonna be bias here. There's always gonna be weird stuff in there. I definitely heard of like something recently about like a Wikipedia page in one language. It's pretty neutral, like you said, and then like in another language, it just completely changes everything. Like as if you wouldn't even notice it's the same page if you didn't even check the other side in the first place. So yeah, it's definitely a lot of crazy stuff there, but it definitely is. It definitely is a useful resource, and I'm pretty glad that it's not owned by any sort of like hard leaning thing on any side. But it definitely is kind of I guess concerning how many people do rely on it because it should be seen as like a medium to get information. I guess like the best way to do like actual research is go check out other sources, or if you do go to Wikipedia, look at the sources that they cited themselves as well.
Yeah. The sources that Wikipedia cites are great starting places, but they're rarely ever a good spot to get all your research from, especially if you're looking intently on a subject. Yeah, for reals. Well, I guess that's what I got to say on that part. Is there another part of internet culture you would like to specifically get into and touch on while we're here?
I suppose one thing I want to talk about is like I guess really like the concept of social media. Um, it's definitely great in one way. It brings a lot of people together. There's people that you probably would have never met, like even us two. Like we would have never met each other, even known about each other's existence if it weren't for the internet.
Chill.
So it's definitely something that's good and brings people together. Um, but there's so many like issues that come with it at the same time. I definitely saw like this one little like a joke post or something, and even though it was a joke, it was like it was pretty realistic in a way. It basically involved like saying like before the internet, if there's someone that's like, hey, I want to like eat these like mushrooms or something, like, I don't know, eat these poisonous looking mushrooms, people around them would be like, hey, don't do that, that's stupid. Um, and then the person doesn't do it, and they end up being all right in the end. But then with the internet, it's like, hey, I want to like eat these mushrooms or something. And then you could just find a community on the internet that's like, yeah, we all like eating these weird, not great mushrooms. And then, the person just ends up being part of a community and they don't actually learn that, like, hey, you shouldn't be eating these mushrooms. And then, they kind of just be trapped in like this little group and they don't actually end up improving or whatnot. And, I guess it's like one of the cons of, social media as a whole, that even though it does connect a lot of people, it does also like entrap a lot of people away, and it kind of like keeps people in sort of weird, uh, like I guess view of reality, and they kind of they don't really see reality as it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me and my people, the social media stuff was especially weird. Like the internet was a way of communicating, and we saw it as that. But when social media stuff started, like MySpace and other stuff like that, we had this look about it where we have a concept of what is evil and what is good, and the Aramaic interpretation is pretty similar. But basically, distractions are evil, and things that make you fail are evil, and things that lead you to success or make you focus on something that matters are good. That's the basics of it. Now, when we saw the social media stuff start appearing, most of us looked at that and went, oh, this is a big distraction. This is, something that takes you away from reality and life and is doing the stuff. You're not like thinking about having kids or moving forward or seating the people you know. It's promoting the stuff of like, hey, just look at this thing I'm doing instead of doing something yourself, and it's really that ceiling with it. So a lot of us sort of stepped away from it and sidestepped it like that's gross and I don't like it, even though the capabilities of social media stuff, if used correctly, can really help people get on the right track. Let them know that this thing that they've been, like your example, this thing they've been eating regularly is actually harming them and like preventing them from building up muscle growth or, any sort of thing like that. So there's definitely this weird view that we've had towards it. And then when we've started interacting with it, we've had weird experiences. Like a lot of areas you would see, like, there's this whole thing where one of the first big, like, social media guys that we would see on, like YouTube, Twitch sort of thing and stuff, there was someone who would go around and, like, slap someone's auntie and, stuff like that. And that was, like, his big thing he was doing and stuff. So we would see that it was like those who went into these communities first and sort of put a name for us were those who, among our own community and stuff, were like the ones who we felt were distracted or, being idiotic and helping evil in such a way. So it was definitely a lot harder to get more people like my own interested and invested in it because we see it as that's the place where failures go. As opposed to like, that's the place where I get recipes, or that's the place where I, tell stories from previous generations and learn things that I can then use to move forward. So there definitely was a weird stigma on it. And it still sort of has there, but you see more and more people sort of breaking into the space. Now if you go and you look at like VTubers, for example, who are looked at as just a big distraction for the longest time, you will see those who are talking about things within their own area. Some of them are like political. Others are like talking about, sure, they're playing games, but they're talking about the language they know. And there's things you can get where you can have them be like, oh, I will teach you this word. Or I will, if you send this money here, I will ask my grandfather about this. And then on the next video, and when I will have the story that I will tell you while we're doing whatever we're doing, or whatever. Like sometimes you get a story about like where a ship disappeared during World War II and all this other stuff. It's really cool. We're starting to expand into there, and it's not just people who are really super trying to grab your attention and distract you from life, but those who are also willing to promote your life and you doing things. Like even with, like say, there's a few VTubers out there who are like, hey, I'm this way and I really promote, working out and doing these things and feeling healthy with yourself and getting your body right. Even though while I'm here, I'm just me relaxing, playing games. It's just you relaxing, talking and listening with me. But that's what I'm about, and I'll teach you and talk to you about it and tell you how I'm doing. Even tell me how you're doing, and we can, compare games and all that other stuff. So even amongst that space, we're seeing more of us come in and try to get the social media stuff, whether it's, a weirdly specific thing or like Twitter and talking there, to where it's becoming something that's a useful tool. But we're also at the same time seeing people who are messing with it and making it dumber, So there's really this weird space where it's all really odd, So figured that's worth mentioning. Yeah.
I definitely um can see like the ways that you used to see the internet. I didn't really live that much, before the time of the internet, I suppose. Like there, I did like have a life before I like was exposed to the internet. And I definitely must say like it definitely was way different then, but I definitely understand like the thinking it's like, all like really distracted because that's kind of what the internet really is, especially nowadays. Everything's always trying to grab your like attention towards it and whatnot. And to be honest, I can definitely understand and sort of agree with like, how you guys used to see it. Like, it's just all just trying to distract you from, everything else you're trying to do in your life. And I definitely think like people, knowing it's a distraction, do use it purposely as a distraction for their life. When they, they could be improving their own life, they instead kind of like, spend a lot of their time on the internet, especially on like social media stuff. And it's like, it's not really helping you to be
Yeah.
here. Like, yeah, there are ways to like find things that can help you, but like most of the time, it's not really helping a lot of people. Like, you can have it there as like a side thing if you want companionship, if you want to find friends, if you want to find people, find connections to other people. Yeah, you can have it there, but it's almost always going to be infinitely better to like actually go out there yourself and get off like the internet for a while.
Yeah. Uh, it's a really strange place, and the way that it is, I guess, odd. If you're not purposeful about it, you can quickly lose yourself. And there's a difference between like distracted meditation, where you're using different things to help you refocus. So you're doing something that's not related to whatever you're about to sort of build this space where your brain can process things, like a calming video of someone just playing chill Minecraft might not be something that's actively helping you, build a relationship with your child, for example. But having that time, that break, could be there in a way where it allows your brain to process that situation and come up with ideas while it's, doing something else. So there's definitely using the internet like that. And then there's distraction, where it's like, oh, I was supposed to be, working on my relationship with my child. I don't want them in juvie. And instead, all I've done is, look at like Kim Kardashian's nails for like 16 hours or whatever weird thing distracted you, you know. So being purposeful with it is definitely a thing that I think is important. But knowing when, where, and how to let the flow sort of take you, and when you have to disengage from that is a hard thing to learn, especially if you're someone who's like prone to addiction. Like if you're someone who's like a really good like combat veteran, typically the reason you're that way has something to do with parts of your genetics all lining up a certain way. And if even one or two of those lines up correctly, you are prone to addiction. So the things that can catch you with addiction, like casinos or, instant gratification gotcha games and stuff, can catch you. And if you're not being purposeful about what you're doing, those things can get you. You wind up stuck in this state rather than doing what you actually set out to do. So I think that this year, if you don't know enough about the internet, how it works, especially the social media things like Twitter's like thing and Facebook's like feature and stuff, is a easy way to get distracted and you can become addicted to it. So a lot of people don't know that when they come in. So they don't realize like, oh, this is sort of like alcohol. I need to be careful with it or it could become a problem. And so yeah, there's a lot of people where that's definitely an issue they need to be careful about. And the culture itself doesn't really talk about that enough. It's often well known, but not communicated. And I think that's a bit of an issue that we have as the culture on the internet, is just expecting people to know and understand things, even though we're moving at like 900 miles per hour. So, yeah.
Yeah, I gotta agree. Things are definitely like way too fast nowadays, as like society as a whole. But yeah, definitely on the internet. Um, having the time to like think about yourself and like it's a meme to like say go outside, touch grass and whatever. But like there's like actual like deeper meaning behind that. Like yeah, you should be taking some time for yourself is I guess a better way to put that joke. And appreciate like the things around you, um, or the things you got. At least in the real world. Like yeah, you can use the internet as like a distraction if you like really need to in a way, but you can't stick with that forever. Like you're gonna have to get out of that fantasy at some point. So I definitely do feel like social media does trap people in a way, away from reality. And it's something that people definitely do got to work
I
on.
got it.
And unfortunately, a lot of the people who are saying this stuff are kind of like the extreme people. Let's say I don't know, like Andrew Tate. He's like, yeah, like the advice he gives
Oh,
of
God,
like,
yeah.
hey, yeah, work, think about yourself, go work out or whatever. The stuff he's telling to like, I guess his audience is like younger guys. The advice is not really bad, but like, of course, it has to come from someone who's like way too extreme, who's more ideologies that are definitely bad. And I feel like there really needs to be a better people, for people who definitely do need that help. Take care of yourself. There definitely has to be like more people out there saying this stuff, and it really shouldn't be left up to these extreme people saying it.
Yeah. I gotta agree on that one. I think my favorite guy in the world builder space has been Hello Future Me. And the main reason for that is he used to work for like suicide prevention hotlines and stuff like that. And he's coming from a place of honesty and he wants to help you. He doesn't want you to just get stuck listening to videos or whatever. He wants you to take what he's talking about, think about things, and implement it in your own works. Or as well as looking at works that exist and applying the information he's talked about there to see sort of what you're, you build out, and for you to go learn more, like go research some history, go research some engineering concepts or stuff like that. Like he doesn't want you to get stuck into like just a video loop. He wants you to experience life, and bringing more people like that in just all around not just, YouTube or Twitch, whatever, just in the communities online that you encounter. Or even if you're part of one, strive to be that person. It's really a lot better for everyone if there are people in the community helping people deal with their real life, even if it's just being a thing like, hey, I heard you had a rough day today. Did you make sure to have breakfast? Or like in our community, we'll see someone saying, hey, did you get enough sleep yet? Stuff like that. But the way they have those conversations with each other are like built up on trust and knowing each other. It's not like, hey, you go to F to sleep. I know you need it. It's more of like, oh, you're up a little late. Did you get the sleep you need? I know you go. You got stuff tomorrow and everything like that. Like, there's really that sort of like true kindness that people need to have in order for a community to improve. And that's all over online. We need more people like that. In general. So if you don't know what to be or how to be in a community online, just being helpful towards people and being honest about it, and being approachable when it comes to these things. Of course, not like, hey, here's my social security, but being like, oh yeah, I have an exercise regimen too, or oh yes, I also have a pet. I make sure I take care of them every day. Woo, I watered them today or whatever. It can be a big thing to helping people realize that the real world exists and matters, but not in a way that takes them away from why they're there. Because there could be all sorts of reasons why they're there. It could literally be someone trying to get away from a particularly bad aspect of the life they're going through right now, or stuck in. So, I don't want to go too hardcore, but you want to make sure people are actually taking care of themselves and those around. I guess, I'm sort of how I want to word it. Yeah. Okay, so think a little bit more about internet culture we should probably touch on is, and yeah, this is a good one. So there is definitely this idea on the internet where the ability to become insular and hyper focused on things in weird directions, as opposed to looking for a realistic solution, is common. It's easy to do. Even something that makes sense can go insane really fast. And you have to, if you're part of the community, avoid hitting any T terms from when it expands in a weird direction like that, or else you wind up being distanced from everybody. This happened to me with the OSR. So the OSR is a community online. Well, now it's a set of communities that's all broken up and weird. But basically, it was made as a counter thing to TSR, because TSR bought, D&D and everything got weird. So they were like, OSR. And it was a big joke about it for a long time. Currently, OSR means old school rules, but all it really meant when it first developed was not TSR, just OSR, but we're us doing our own thing, pre-TSR. So it's like a D&D focused, but any sort of game, they make their own games, kind of group. It's all about, role playing and stuff like that, but in ways that's, instead of being sometimes just counter big corporation and we do it our way, it's become very much counter normative in some areas and got really weird. Like there's some sections of it that are basically what it used to be, but most of them have forgotten what their core was, what the purpose of the whole thing was about. and sort of just taken a chunk of things and made their section within that community about that chunk. And that happened for a good while, but everyone would still communicate and talk. And then Wizards of the Coast did something really weird with D&D, and the community like fractured almost overnight. It was really bizarre. So Wizards of the Coast is terrible at understanding their own, what they own. They don't understand it. So they don't understand D&D at all. They just don't. And they did this thing, set of things that kept making people more and more mad. One of the big ones was they would hire people from communities like mine or other groups, like you would get people from the Hopi or anywhere else. You would bring them in, they'd hire them, be like, yes, you. Okay, write this species that we're doing a rewrite of the species that we're bringing back into D&D, or we're making this new one. Hey, write it for us and, make it like a cool, interesting people. And so people they hire would do that, You would have someone be like, oh, okay, I got hired on. I'm from the Doggard, tribe back in Africa. So I'm going to go ahead and put some of the aspects of my culture on here and do this other stuff because that's why I was hired. And then they send it in, or they'd be like from Mali and they'd add these aspects and put these stuff, and they'd send in the final draft. And sometimes a precursor of what they were working on would make it out to the public for us to see, or but that's really cool. I like where this is going. I can't wait for the final published product. And then Witches of the Coast would send it to editors who don't know or care at all about any of those cultures. So they'd rip away everything and replace it with a few words. Like they would rip away all this information about like these turtle people taking shells and making like necklaces that mean all these different words and stuff. And when they're set up on a building, they mean all this stuff, it's like their own way of thinking. They rip all that away and say, primitive shell necklaces or primitive shell, writing, and just leave it at that with null information. If they said writing, that'd be more than we expected, this primitive shell decoration. And they would do that to all these works, and then that would be the final version that comes out of the book. And they would say it was, whoa, what the hell? So they do that, and simultaneously, they forget what things were. Like, I think the drow is the best example. And this is a big point where I noticed the gigantic split where people who were like, even like white people, who like, didn't really care about the other stuff where they got mad. Because like Witches of the Coast forgot that the drow weren't a race. They were like, Wizards of the Coast said, oh, the drow, why aren't they all evil? That's not okay. We can't have an evil race. We gotta have good drow and stuff. So let's make some of those and put them in. Well, bam. Then everyone went insane. And the reason everyone went insane is anyone who's played the game before 3rd edition, or even half of those during 3rd edition, know what the drow are. The drow are not a race. They're a cult that got deformed, who are part of a race. And the race they're part of was the Dark Elves, who were the dark-skinned elves in the world. And there's still plenty out there. Most of them just got killed during the Great Elven Wars, which are in the setting. And Molth, who was the leader of the drow and a goddess, was able to go between worlds, so she killed as many of them as she could across the different worlds. There's still plenty that exist, including like the Silver Elves, which were a type of dark elf who lived in a different one of the worlds in the settings, all these other things, who are still out there and still alive. And all of those who sided with Saloon are dark elves who are still alive. But Wizards of the Coast said, nah, they don't matter. The only dark elves in our setting are the drow, and now there's some good ones. And that made everyone go crazy. Because you're like, excuse me, what? What did he just say? What? And at the same time, they were saying, oh no, all of our orcs are like African cultures, and that's not okay. So we're gonna reroute and redesign them all. But the funny thing was, all of the orc cultures in the game were actually like sculpted around like Scottish, Irish, and that whole area. Shit, so they had no idea what we were talking about. Which is weird, because the only game I saw that had like African American or just straight up African inspired orcs was Warcraft, not D&D. So that was really weird, but they seem to have forgotten everything, and so they did all these weird decisions at once. And it made the OSR go crazy. Like, there were people who went and said, well, I just hate D&D now, screw it, I'm making my own things. There were others who said, if you, like these peaceful, good, dark-skinned elves, you're an idiot and an asshole, and I despise you. And then the people within the community who were like, no, guys, wait, they're trying and stuff, said the wrong things. They said things like, well, don't gatekeep, or they used other terms like that. And there had been other things that happened online where those terms got used. And so they were immediately associated with the groups who had used those terms. So they were like extra separated from each other, and it became a whole crazy disaster. And one of the most hated concepts I've ever encountered in the TTRPG space happened because of this, because no one was able to speak to each other in a middle ground voice when this was going on. And I think that's a big problem, is no one was able to speak in a middle ground voice and get the community to come back together and talk things out responsibly, which you see is really hard to do that if the community isn't prepared ahead of time. So yeah, it's a big thing with internet culture. Like, the community is either prepared and things just go okay and they're all just like minor weird things, or they're not prepared and it becomes a disaster. But the thing I hate that came from this was this thing that you'll see in like TTRPG books being sold online all the time now, where they have an I hate you page or an I hate you set of pages. And sometimes those will also exist before you even buy the book. And the first time I encountered that was a journaling TTRPG, and it had this huge, it was like 5 pages worth of reading on their website that was just an I hate you page. And then their book itself had like another 10 pages of I hate you in it, which was absolutely insane. And when I saw that, and when I talked to more people of my type, and we all had this weird thing where we're like, what the hell is going on? And we all top-read it out. A lot of people stopped playing TTRPGs who had just been getting into it because of this happening. So the far-reaching effects of letting your area online explode, of not training people to communicate with each other responsibly, can reach far and wide, well beyond what you think about. Like with my space, with OSR, we exploded and disintegrated overnight because of one corporate decision that exploded everything and wound up leading to a bunch of Native Americans, a bunch of Africans who were just entering into the space, a bunch of, African Americans and Native Americans who were from African descent who had come back to the tribes recently, which is a whole big thing of them trying to do. It was so much work. Who had just started interacting with this space of, RPGs, TTRPGs, and gaming in general, who immediately saw when they went looking into it, people were saying, I hate you, and telling them that they were worth nothing, or that their religious values did not matter and they should leave and not play this thing. So they just stopped caring. And it was right as we were all starting to really enter in force. Like, we were getting games built by people who were in South Africa. Like, there were TTRPGs coming out. There were, games that were like D&D, but inspired by, like, the life of people who'd lived through gang violence, in America as like a way of coping with it, that they were making. And some of these games never came out because the community turned to this cesspool overnight. And it's wacky. And I didn't know how bad it was for around this time till about this year when I went looking into it and I was like, well, why did that happen? Why was this thing there? And found out just how bad a situation it really was. So for me, with online spaces, if you want your community to survive and to thrive and to get new people, helping everyone understand not just each other, but like that people matter and that you don't need to get hyper crazy in an opinion to have a different opinion. Or even if your opinions are incredibly opposite, you can still communicate like a normal person. Like, that's important. And without that, the whole thing falls apart ridiculously fast and becomes weirdly insular. Find it, it's not fun for anybody. And it hits way more people than you'd expect. That's, I guess, my biggest thing I gotta say there. And it's a bit of a segue into our next discussion, which was going to be about dealing with conflict. So, I guess any final thoughts before we fully switch over?
Not really. I definitely uh that I definitely I'm sorry to hear like all that had happened. Like it is very sad to see like basically a whole community or I guess like a potential big community just fall apart completely just because of well people not being able to just really act normally and right. And it's really sad to see that because I definitely feel
Yeah,
like you said, there's a lot of potential that could have came from that, and it is really sad to hear. Uh, what ended up happening later in the
yeah. So, yeah, I definitely, it's something that really saddens me, especially since, the comic community died, and then this happened with the OSR, and then the CRC wound up going through what it did. I'm like, man, it was boom, boom, boom. Well, should I have even bothered with the internet? Or should I have just stayed with my people? As I've actually considered it a few times, which is it's wacky because we were going through some crazy stuff ourselves. But yeah, dealing with conflict online. But that's tough about that. I think it's a good subject. So, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I guess I sort of have like a lot of experience. Oh, sorry, I think my mic went out. Okay, so I think I actually have, I probably have like a lot of experience in this, at least in terms of like seeing how other people deal with it, because I kind of hang around like the, I guess, commentary space of YouTube and Twitter and whatnot, and you definitely do see like a lot of very interesting actors in that space of the internet. And I guess, dealing with conflict is obviously going to be the biggest part of, a place like that. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the commentary community. Basically, like, I guess, like, the best thing to say is if you know Keemstar, he's kind of a part of it. You probably know who Keemstar is now. But,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not
yeah,
hearing the name too well. Could you say it again?
Keemstar from Drama Alert. Have you heard of that?
Team Star. I think I have, but I don't really know too much about it if I have. That does
Well,
sound familiar though.
he's definitely an interesting person. If you even want to get into a little bit of all the stuff he's done, it's going to take you hours, but it's definitely someone interesting, I guess. If you're even slightly interested, if you're even slightly interested, just look into who Keemstar is, and that's like a huge thing. Um, yeah, I mean, he's definitely someone who's dealt with conflict before. Uh, there's a lot of ways to deal with conflict. In my experience, and what I've seen, the worst way possible to deal with conflict, oh, I guess one of the worst ways, is to be very unserious about it. If you got any sort of issues going on, treat it seriously. Uh, don't lie, don't try to gaslight anyone. As soon as you do any of that stuff, and anyone can find out, it is over for you. You have lost everything. Don't even bother coming back. No one's gonna take you back. And like yeah, you may have an audience, but look, no one's gonna look at you seriously ever again. Everyone's gonna make fun of you. And when it comes to like this stuff, you just I mean, obviously the easiest way is to not do anything that leads to conflict in the first place. But the second best thing is admit when you're wrong and basically just tell the truth of everything. And if you're very honest and truthful, you're trying to be real with it, and you're not like a predator or something, people are probably gonna forgive you. And
Yeah,
you know, given some time, it'll be a bit better in
yeah.
the end, and it'll all be fine. But I feel like the internet kind of gives a lot of people big egos, and they don't really feel like they don't have to apologize or deal with any sort of conflict seriously. They think they can just get away with just being unserious and whatnot, which does not help at all.
That yeah, I think that's fair to say. Something I want to bring up because talking about conflict online. One of the ways people try to say that they're right is by throwing statistics out, and they'll give a source for the statistics. They'll be like, hey, the here's what happened to me in CRC. We had someone who was incredibly disliked by the CRC community as a whole, who was in the space, who would do a bunch of things. But basically, when we wound up talking about the subject matter of human trafficking and, organ sales and all that stuff, were someone who was just writing a made up book on the subject. And they, to basically make themselves sound super important, had said, well, the CIA has these stats, da 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 da, and the FBI says this, and they say it's worth that much for a kidney, or this, da 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 da. So obviously, a character who, kills someone and sells it, and he's making this much money. How about da? And it did like that, and specifically to undermine my real world lived experience with people who had done that. Because I was an area where that was a big thing that was happening, and it was really bad. And I worked hard to get out of that and away from that. You know, that was a long struggle. I'm glad I got there. But, the truth of the matter was a lot more people who do that get away than don't. And one of the big thing is they wind up poor over and over again because you have big surges of money, like 1,500 or whatever, that goes away to keep you there, and goes into other things. And if you're not doing the whole process yourself, which most people lack, then you weren't making big chunks of money. It was like working at Walmart or anything, you would make some money and it would come as a big chunk, but it would equate to about how much you would make if you just work a normal job. So it just came in chunks. And that was really the big difference. So I was trying to explain it like the guy, no one is making, like $2 million off of a human heart on an individual sale. It's a bunch of people on the process, the chain, who are making small chunks of that. You know, that's just not how it works in reality. There's a whole chain of people, it's a whole business, and well, what happened is because they had these statistics they threw around from corporations and, the CIA and the FBI who have number of what the value is, not why the value is that much or how much it's divvied up. I was basically treated as the idiot who didn't know anything by Lefty and a few others when I had personally lived through these experiences, and that was really weird. So I did not like that at all. That was very weird. And this is someone who the community as a whole did not like. And it was like 2 or 3 months later, Lefty wound up taking them out, like officially and everything, because they were just that bad as a community member. So I had that experience. But a lot of people will try to use stats and figures to make themselves seem right and holier than thou or better than you. And I think if someone's been honest to you a long time and they try to speak from real world experience, that matters more than a randomly thrown out statistic, no matter who that comes from. And I feel like when you're online, it's easy to just say, hey, this is a quick verifiable fact. And say, well, that's easy. Haha, done. I don't have to think about anything or relegate thought process here. This person has to be right. But critically thinking, that skill still matters, and people's personal experiences are still the things they went through. So, don't forget that just because you're online and you're at where like Wikipedia is, it doesn't magically change things. Uh, I think a lot of people need to be reminded of that. You know, um, yes, that's a big one. So when it comes to resolving conflict, if someone's is throwing out stats and figures, it's often just to try to make themselves seem right. Whether or not they truly know it, they might have just done some research. They might not have necessarily have lived experiences. So don't think of that as they win, the argument is done. No, still think critically, communicate critically, and have an open, honest conversation. If someone's getting too weird and stuff, then probably they're not taking it honestly, or what they have, they can't share with you. Like, for me, there's a few years there where some of the information about those horrible things that had going on in my life and around me wasn't like fully in like police information yet. So if I talked about it there, that would be revealing information in a way where it's like, implicating things as opposed to I've given it to authorities, they've okayed me to talk about it or whatever and stuff, like there's differences. So if I can't talk about something, it's because, I literally can't talk about it, you know? Whereas a bunch of other things, I tell you everything I can about stuff that people ask, are interested, invested in, whatever. Yeah, because it's known. I'm not saying something that's going to get me in trouble. Whatever trouble was related to it is already done. Yeah, So, yeah, but definitely there's a lot of feeling things out with your heart when it comes to that, as opposed to just listing with your brain logic. So that, yes, a fact, victory, So, and it doesn't just mean discount facts. It's, oh, what does this fact actually mean? Is a better thing to look at. Like, oh, it says the value of a human heart is this much. Why is it that much? How does the money work and stuff? Those become interesting questions you can ask to get involved in the conversation. Stuff like that. Um, that's really what I want to say about solving conflict is stats, figures. That's not the greatest thing ever. It's not a win-all be-all. Definitely don't treat it like that. Interact with the conversation, find out why the facts are the facts if you really want to give the facts a lot of merit. Because oftentimes those facts are used to distract you from what the main point of the conversation is, which could be, hey, this guy's being very rude and disregarding people's real world experiences because they have a fantasy book they want to write. Like stuff like that. Like, what is the actual point of the conversation we're having here? And what are people doing with it? Really, that's more important than numbers. That's all I got. I'm at.
Yeah, no, I do definitely think like as well as you handle that, I definitely do feel like yeah, your feelings are pretty disregarded there. It's honestly very surprising. You know, like I
So
feel like
yeah, because facts
you
came up, and
spoke.
dude, don't argue
Yeah,
facts.
I mean, yeah, I might as well just be citing Wikipedia. I mean, the Wikipedia tells that. Like we
Yeah,
just talked about earlier, but Wikipedia can have wrongful information on it. So yeah, no, I definitely think that's like pretty ridiculous. How like no one took like a real world experience and was like, hey, maybe this is more accurate. Because honestly, if someone told me a bunch of like statistics from like a government website or whatever, but then someone told me like, hey, this is what's actually going on like how I'm living life, I definitely would just take the person who's telling me their life story to me because they literally lived through it, they've seen it all. So it's kind of like they definitely know what they're talking about. I probably should be listening to them. So I'm kind of surprised how that went because it's like, I feel like a lived experience is definitely way better to take as like a testimony, I guess, or like as a fact than,
Yeah.
just a bunch of numbers and
That,
whatnot.
like, I can only imagine. I can only imagine people like when it comes to like the denied lived experience, and just be like, nah, I don't care if someone says it's that way. Navajo people are all magical super trackers. Everyone knows that because it's on the internet. And it's like, my God, some people have taken other skills or learned other things or were denied access to their family and didn't learn anything they should have known or were completely interested in something like space travel instead. Listen to what people are saying. What is wrong with you? Yeah, it's definitely a thing. It's weird. But yeah.
I definitely feel like you did.
Yeah. So um I'll leave the floor open to you. Anything else about conflict resolution and stuff on like?
Sorry, hold on. Honestly, uh, I don't think I really went through many things personally. I mean, well, I guess I did, with people, but not really anything really public wise. Any issues that I usually deal with, I try to keep out, at least in the public. Um, and any private issues, I try to just find the quickest way possible sometimes to just stop an issue if that is the best way, the best course of action. But yeah, no, usually yeah, I try to stay out of that stuff public wise. Like it's kind of like I said earlier, I try to stay out. Don't start a problem in the first place is the best way to prevent stuff like that. Um, but I guess in your case, it's not like you really did anything on purpose. So, uh, I don't know. I guess I've just been
Yeah,
fortunate enough to like not run into anything like that, at least to my memory. And
yeah.
there could be something, but I guess it wasn't big enough for me to like really remember.
I think yeah, okay. Well, that's kind of nice that you haven't had that many big ones. But I guess I'll go into one more thing about this. Um, I notice a lot of people, especially on social media, will get really attacked. But this is especially true for people who are selling things. I guess is a way to say it. Like uh, people who are like, "Hey, buy my program, and I'll teach you how to do this," And okay, now you send me money, and I tell you stuff to improve your digital art or whatever it is, and I'll teach you. Da, da, da. People have those sorts of programs kick themselves in the foot in the weirdest ways. And I think the biggest one I can tell you is the weirdest way. They kick themselves in the foot is they will see someone in their little space who's like doing something, like they have their little thing going where they're showcasing whatever the progress of what they've been going through, right? And someone who doesn't know or understand that space of the community has found it and said something that is against your ethos, that is against the way that your area of whatever space you're on there, say it's Twitter or even MySpace or Facebook, whatever, how it's ran, how it's expected to function. So when they see that, rather than, confidently say, hey, you know, here isn't the space for that kind of thing. It's the space for this. If you want to talk about that, please talk to them over in this area, or redirecting them to the right area to talk about that, or like, oh, that thing that you said is actually against a lot of the way that we think about stuff. Oh, we'd like to say things more like this or that, or whatever. Instead of redirecting people to talk about things in the correct space or the correct way for the area they're in, especially since, it's the internet, people coming from all over and don't know anything where they walk in the door. It's not like you are a a person from France who's living in France, and then there's the Lavore, and you go to that place and you know how it functions. That's just not how it is. The internet is often like, aha, here's a small, tiny, tiny native village in Alaska, like way up here and stuff, and someone from, the middle of Russia just walk in the door. Or, someone from Australia just, eat walked in, they don't know what's going on. Yeah, that's often what happens on it. But these people who are sort of teaching those things and selling that sort of information to try to teach people or train people or get them caught in whatever weird loop they want them in, will do this thing where instead of correcting people or helping them get to where they need to get to or say things the way that they should be, instead they do this thing where they say, I know what you are. You dirty monkey sills, how dare you come in here and do this thing like, okay, my guy. It's not like I'm someone from France who stepped into Laveur and then kicked a statue. That's not what happened. That's like I'm someone from an entirely different country who was magically teleported to your space without even walking to the front door, has no idea where they are, and put my hand down the rest and didn't realize I was touching the Mona Lisa. All right, I messed up, but please redirect me. Please help me. Don't kick in my doors and beat me up for it. But often that's what happens. For instead, is they just attack you and set everyone else in their community to do the same thing. And then it goes crazy. And what winds up happening is those sorts of communities where they can't handle outsider being dumb will create these very toxic environments where people specifically go out and be like, oh, we need someone who tracks IPs and whatnot and all this other stuff. And they turn into an incredibly toxic community that works towards ruining people's lives as opposed to bettering their community. And I don't know why it happens so much on mine, but it does. And I've run up on those a lot of times, and it's just not what you want to be involved in at all. It's like at all. You want to get out of there. It's gross. Yeah. So yeah, don't let your conflict resolutions become that. And if you notice it's that way, try to talk to the people who are resolving it wrong and explain, hey, we're handling things in an incorrect way. We should be doing more of this. And if they come at you, you're in the wrong space. Get out of there. Make your own community about whatever it was before. It's time to step away from that one. Because if they go that crazy, they're not really stopping if people in the old community can't convince them what they're doing is wrong and they're too far gone. So that's the last thing I have to say about conflict resolution is be aware that stuff sort of happens and usually happens in communities like that. Who does?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with that. Communication is definitely key in situations like
So, I guess we have 3 other topics that we can probably do pretty quick. There's Minecraft, online forum versus social roleplay, and another one which now I should have wrote it down instead of using a machine. Oh, kindness versus nicety. That was the last one. So, okay, which of those 3 sounds like a fun topic to run into?
I suppose we just go in order of how he listed it. Put that in order.
Yay! Okay, let's talk Minecraft. Oh, whoa, I love Minecraft. It's fun. But some of the spaces around it could use some work. But I noticed a lot of the ones where I thought they would expand, sort of, I mentioned it earlier, well, they sort of turned into their own spaces instead, which was still cool and useful that, they're no longer really Minecraft spaces so much. But yeah, you want to go ahead and start us off? Well, me too.
Yeah, I definitely do think the game is at a great place, and I definitely feel like that the hate on it, with like, oh, the developers are lazy, oh, they're not, the updates are bad or whatever. I definitely do feel like that stuff is just a bit too much at times because it's like, you paid for this game once, either $13 or $30, depending on when you bought it. Um, they don't have to keep updating it. I mean, at this point, Minecraft is a completely finished game. It's been finished for like a long time now. It was probably finished like 7 years ago. Whenever they added the end update, that's when they could have literally ended development. They didn't. They continue to make
Yep.
these like free updates and stuff. They even involve the community for a lot of them. And it's kind of dumb as I think sometimes boat stuff were, especially with like content creators like sort of rigging them, I guess in a way, sort of, I guess quote unquote election fraud in a way. I feel like
Yeah.
the hate on the developers and the game in general is definitely way too forced. It's just meant to be a fun sandbox game, and you just do whatever you want in it, and that's really
Okay.
all it should be.
You did. Yeah. You did bring up something interesting, which was the mob votes. And I gotta say, I was one of the people who was upset about one, the mob vote, and two, the way people talk about the mob vote. Honestly, my feeling was that the mob vote should have been because a winner is the first one that makes it into the game, like on the update when the update happens. And the other ones that are there will happen later down the road, you know, possibly as part of an update or just way down the road, but they're not like entirely kicked out from entering the game. That's where I feel the conversation should have been when it came to those. But it was always, moreover, man, I hate them. They didn't add my crab into the game. Or, man, we got this thing. Yeah, instead of, talking about, hey, why does it have to be forever these things are gone instead of just a long time for them to be implemented? You know, the conversation never really turned to a space that made sense to me. So that's where my main issue was. Yeah, the game itself is great. There are a few things I wish were a little different. Like, I really wish when you were setting up world mode, there was a little more customization there. Like, I think hardcore is the silliest thing ever because you set hardcore, but you can't change other things when you set hardcore. But you can't, change mob spawn rate or other stuff like that. Those certain rules are just hard coded into hardcore. But me, I would very much love a world where if I die, I'm dead. But especially if there were less like monsters to worry about, so every time there was one, it was more of a worry for me. Like there's ways I'd want to play hardcore that I feel should be base part of the game that just aren't implemented. And then there's other things as well, like world generation options. I feel the way they have it is okay, but there should be another little bar where you can set up things where it's like, make it hyper realistic, like sort of what it is now, where it tries its best to give realistic generation and colors of things. There should be a mode where it's like classic, just like when a game was first made, like the grass was super crazy green and the generation was kind of chunky and some did have weird little crazy things happening. To that maybe a few others that could be part of the base game that allow for like, oh, it's even more colorful than that and like even crazier generation of like things going cuckoo and stuff. Because if you had that set up as like the base, then when mobs come in, they could do even more with that stuff to really make it unique and bizarre, in whatever ways they want to go. So I feel a few things like that should be changed to make the experience more like what it's trying to be, which is this sandbox where you really have control over your world. So I feel like that is a thing. And that there's a few other things that could, with like the way you generate a world, to be modified where it's like straight up on the creation screen to make it better. But the actual Minecraft itself and the main gameplay, I feel a few things are wonky, but the game's always been wonky. So let it be wonky, but make things or set up different options. Like, I do like the idea of just having more options with it. Like, I want only classic combat, or I want the advanced combat system, or whatever. Like, instead of having to rely on the modding community, I think having those as selectable modes, especially when there is a classic way the game was before your company took over, would be a great way to allow people to experience that side of it whenever they want, easily without having to do weird stuff. But they do have like the earlier access versions and stuff like that. So they have a sort of counterintuitive way of getting those sorts of things. But I think they could do with a bit more of a look at their own main screens and their customization menus and modification of those to create a better, leaner experience for people. But that's just one thing. The multiplayer aspects of the game are generally all right, the sign. There's a few things that are a little weird, but nothing that's any weirder than any other game, so it's fine. No. I feel that some of the decisions with like updates and creating things and adding content and stuff are fine if they're being considered accurately. We've seen some of the team and we know generally how big the Minecraft team is. And I think the updates we're getting make sense when we consider that they're not just making like one solid game all the way through and on these different systems. They also have to make different versions of the game with different unique, crazy, weird, bizarre stuff for different countries. Like, the Chinese version of Minecraft is completely different than the normal version of Minecraft. And in order to like sell it over there, they have to make sure people can't access or use certain words and stuff. Like, you can't mention Tiananmen Square, you can't do certain other things there. And that all has to be sort of hard-coded in, or they'll have people who literally will do cyber attacks on Chinese servers by mentioning these things and getting the server taken down overnight. Which has happened before they did updates that made these things. So if they want things to work internationally with all these different spaces, is all this work they have to do just to make sure that functions. Yeah. So China's just the most obvious one I can throw out there because it was really sort of bad, the cyber attacks on servers that were running in China. Just like people in the US rightfully do not like a lot of the things that are happening over there, but the way they decide to go about handling it is just ruining people's day who are just trying to have a good day instead of, actually doing something that matters. So, yeah. Well, there's other things too, like if you're going for a Korea, you can't have a game sold in Korea if you can harm a female or a child. You can't sell the game. It's been that way for a long time. Every now and then there are attempts to make that go away and not be like a law and all this other stuff, but generally it's the way it is. So when games go over to be in Korea, they usually have to be changed to where there are no children that you can harm, or there's no, women that you can harm, or the things that are that way are so distinctly inhuman looking that there's no way you could mistake it for a human woman or a human child. So they're dealing with all these different countries from all around the world who all have their own unique laws, rules, and weird things that are going on, and they need to make all of that work consistently across the board. And that includes different computer software and hardware. Like, you look at China, they're using the stuff they made there, or they're using overclocked products that are made by NVIDIA and other companies, where they have overclocked them, because there's no way they're allowed to get them if they're not ones that they've modified. So, again, that's a lot of different countries, a lot of different problems. And making sure Brazil doesn't just steal the game instantly, is a whole other can of worms they've had to work with. and they aren't allowed to just do the simple thing of being like, oh, only costs $3 US if you live in Brazil. And that's not the option they have. So they had to do all this other work, you know. So considering all of that, I think they're actually doing a really good job. So yeah, I cut them more slack than I cut other people because I know they're working on such an international level and they're not like stealing other Microsoft teams to do this. It's their team had one. So
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. They do a lot more work than just isn't said, and people kind of just look at the stuff on social media and just guess that that's everything that is going on. But that's really it.
yeah. But, so yeah, something I want to say about Minecraft is I love how moddable it is, even though it's tough to mod it. It's easy to sort of get started and try. Even I've tried modding it and gotten sort of halfway there or something existed. Um, and Minecraft themselves, Mojang, has made tools to make it easier. Like you want to make entities or creatures or items or blocks in Minecraft. They have a tool that anybody can get for free where they can get that thing and then start making stuff that is they have a little bit more work or they have a little bit more support from the community they can implement into the game very easily. What I would like to see is something like M Creator made by Mojang. As if they were able to do something like that and make it available to everybody, that I think they would have a way of how to say properly making their modding community into something where I believe they would deserve the ability to say so much about it, like, hey, no guns, no NSFW, none of this, if they built all the tools for the modding community. Because then, when you get the tools, you agree to the terms of service of the tools. But if you have to make and use your own tools for modding things, which are for your own experience, or people who you're playing with as opposed to the main core gamer experience, then I don't think you really have any say in that. So, if they go a little further into their mod support, they can really get a lot more people supporting their views about how mods should be done and actually take the mod space into their own thing. But I don't think they will. And the one reason I think about that is they have this marketplace. They sort of have an air of mystique about it and how it works, and they sort of try to keep that. I'm not sure why. I feel if they were more open about it, they'd have more creators going into that space and selling products on there for them to take a little bit off the top of. But just the way it is, and I don't think they'll change that unless they figure out how to monetize it in a more effective manner. So, yeah. Well, do you want to say something else? How about?
I guess not really anything specific. I mean, they do have like I think something called add-ons or something like that. I don't remember the actual name of it. Data packs. Apparently, that's meant to be like modding but easier, but honestly, it's still very confusing. And you're kind of just on your own slash being on the internet for that. But they are making steps towards making things more community friendly and whatnot. I do appreciate them for doing that, and I do like that the step they are taking of getting rid of any voting system. They're like, you know what, we're just gonna do things on our own now, and that's kind of how they did it for years beforehand. And I feel like that's the best solution for everything.
Yeah. I guess I want to talk about servers and stuff, just sort of my general experience. Let's see here. So, what I think is interesting about a lot of communities online is nowadays a lot of them have their own Minecraft server, even if they're not a Minecraft thing, or a gaming thing. Like the CRC had an official Minecraft server for a while, and there's a few other spaces like that where you could go to like, oh, this is the Digimon, fan Discord or whatever, and that space would have the link to like their their Minecraft server, and you could go and play Minecraft with them. It might be a modded server, it might be unmodded, whatever, but a lot of places had this sort of space. And I think that's really interesting. And even as they don't have their own space of like, oh, we're this, there are communities that will form around Minecraft servers just in and of themselves. These are usually SMPs, like survival multiplayer. And the people who are playing there sort of define what the server is, what it's about, and what's expected of it. And things sort of build up from there, and they become these huge communication hubs and unique places to hang out and interact with. Well, I think in general, they're pretty good. But the ones that are geared specifically towards roleplay are weird. Like, people don't have enough, hello noob, come on in sort of attitude. And oftentimes they shoot themselves in the leg in weird ways. Like, there's this one I wanted to play. It was called something like, Erysia or something like that, and had a fun name. But I found that it said, hey, come play this. It's got like fairies and like, fey creatures and elves and all this other cool stuff and mermaids. All these little things. Come play in our server. You don't need mods. I will put the stuff on for you, so you have to worry about. You can buy wings and stuff from our shop if you want them, and all this other stuff. It's super cool. Come on in. And I went on in, and I was like, cool. This is like a fairy world. I'm gonna play it and stuff. I'm gonna meet people. I'm gonna role play. I'm gonna be like, ooh, I could be an angel basically. It's super cool. I'll play one of those. I don't have wings. That's weird. Was I supposed to have wings? I don't know. I'll ask some people. No one answered anything and whatnot. I was like, okay, so this must be broken. So I do my best to ask around, and I find no information. No one talks to me. Nothing. Even though there are people on at the time, and I try in the Discord, I get no information, no one talking to me. So, okay, the race must be broken for me, or it doesn't include wings. And there must be no way to fix it if it's broken, because no one's talking about it. None of the GMs would talk to me, nothing. So I reset my race. There's a little button you can reset your race. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, I'll go do that. And then it lets me do that. I reset to another one. I go back in, and I find out this one isn't even supposed to have wings, even though the one model does have wings. Stuff like someone gave me that bit of information, and I was like, oh, okay. Shit, I finally got to talk to someone, and it's the one thing they told me out there to say anything about the race. And I was like, okay, cool. And they said, well, there's books there. You should read the books. And I go, oh, there are no books here. I go look around, there are no books. And eventually this person gets there, and they're like, oh, you're right, all the books are gone. That's weird. And I just leave. And don't tell me anything. I'm like, that's weird. So I'm like, okay, I'll go reset my race. And it says that you can't do this within a period of 48 hours again. So now I'm like, what? So I was very frustrated. I tried to do a recording of getting into the game and stuff too, and it had been like 4 hours of this, and I was just done. So I killed Max 2 days later, reset my character to the Angel Race on play, and I goes through, and I still don't have the wings that I get in. And eventually I figure out how to fly, even though the wings aren't showing up and stuff, and this is just guessing at the game. And I get that. I'm like, okay, cool. I can fly a little bit. I don't understand it. I keep messing up. Okay. I'm going to go to one of the cities where all these players are supposedly at. Okay, I'm going there. And I go walking around, and I find the weirdest fairy village. And it's like so weird and bizarre. There's like all these barricades around it. I believe they have books, and there's like, I might get like secret button ways to go in. And I'm like, that's cool. And then I walk around this big circle. And I go through the circle into the place. I'm like, that's weird. And I start looking around, and it's like the Smurfs, but giant, and then like up on ropes and stuff too, and super cool. I'm walking around these places. I'm like, wow, a lot of people have these big circle openings and stuff, and all this stuff started going on. What is this? It's all kind of weird and strange, but cool. I don't understand. It looks so bizarre, and the landscape is weird, and look, it's in my friend, hell is everybody, and what's going on? And stuff, and I can't find any of the players. So I'm like, okay, well, I just gonna call it for the night and I'll check back in later. So when I go, I check in, I check the Discord, and I'm like, hey, so like what's going on and stuff, blah, blah, blah. And someone pops in with a message and say, hey, if you're a fairy or any fae race, and so you have to play at exactly this time on this day, or, quit being a fairy race entirely. You're not worth it. And boom, they pop in and I'm like, what the hell? And so I started asking around. No one really wants to talk to me, but eventually someone talks to me and says, oh, yeah, well, half the player base under this guy hate all the fairies, so we're just going to kick them all out to their own dimensions. So anyone who wants to play those will have to, like, appear in the normal world and then survive being killed hundreds of times over until they get to the fairy world. And then they can start playing as their stupid fairies there. And that's just how it is. And I'm like, what the hell? It was bizarre, the most bizarre thing ever, or so I thought. And then I decided, okay, screw this one, I'm gonna try a few others. And most of the ones I found were like that. And I don't understand that behavior, that attitude, that mental set for anything about. I really don't. But like, when you're not on a role-playing server, that's not the attitude that's there. There's really just more welcoming. Hey, what's up? Here it's like, hey, what's up? I'm a beef. I'm gonna blow up your house. But hey, buddy, this is what I do. And you're like, oh, okay, that's what you do. Okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna shoot you every time I see you in my house. I'm like, yeah, that's great. Anyways, let's play. And you're like, okay, let's play. Let's have fun together. And you'll go have fun. So it's very different. Uh, but that's been my experience with like Minecraft servers and stuff. It's either incredibly welcoming and fun, or it's a role playing server and is incredibly not welcoming for some reason. Wow, Nelson. What about with you? What's been your experience?
My experience with microservice, it's a lot of stuff, honestly. Um,
Yes.
like at this point, it's like really a big, huge blur in my head as of all with all the experiences I've had with servers. Um, it's I probably can't really give one big experience. Because, well, I guess there were. I mean, I haven't really been on servers long term a lot. I've only done that, like I say, recently. I say like around a bit earlier than 2020. I joined like this, one SMP group. They're really great people. I still talk to them to this day. Uh, but that was great. It was the first time I really participated in like any sort of like group SMP stuff. Um, other than like playing with friends every now and then, or I guess the most recent would have been like a 555 server. Um, I've usually had good experiences. Most of the time when I play on servers, it was just by myself and like on either like mini game servers or like stuff like prison servers or whatnot. Usually stuff that you do by yourself, or if you are with other people, you're not like in a big group thing. And I kind of blame that on like my first experience on a faction server because I had no idea what factions even meant.
Oh,
So I kind of just joined that server once and it was not for me. I had a horrible experience on that. I guess not really horrible, but I had like the faction experience. And as of someone who didn't even know what factions even meant, didn't know what it was a bad experience to me. So I guess ever since then, I never really did much in terms of like uh you know big server with like groups and stuff like that until like pretty recently. But those times that I were on servers and whatnot with like I said that SP group earlier, it's been pretty good. I've definitely enjoyed the time I spent on it. There was like another group I do remember. They had like a weird economy system, and I never really understood it at all. They deleted their server at some point. They just disappeared. I don't know where they went. Um, Another group was like a YouTuber server, which I still do watch the YouTuber, so it's not like he's gone or anything. The community is great and stuff, but you had to sub to the YouTuber like on Twitch, And at the time I only was able to join with like gifted subs and whatnot, so I didn't really get to do much long term on that server. But it was fun, and the little that I did stay in it. I just wish some people remembered me when I did come back, because some people did not remember me, despite the fact that I was like with them a lot. But
Well,
I've usually
well,
had a pretty alright time. But there's definitely a lot of stuff mixed in on like short terms that I've been on. But most of the time, it's been pretty good on like any long term stuff. And plus, I guess I technically met you on
damn.
the Minecraft party. That's good.
So yeah, I remember I made the fun little. I tried to make a little house thingy. I tried to run away from the main night area where everyone was sort of spawning and build like a few little safe little houses and stuff with some basic gear and like some snow golems and stuff. Was like that was what I was trying to do. And I remember that you and like a few others would chat on the Discord while playing. And like we're always checking to see what like you and some of the others were up to, and it's always something just completely crazy that was going on, or like someone was doing weird things with perspectives and stuff, and I'm just like, oh wow, that's wuss. And I'm here like trying not to fall off of this like two-story building where I'm trying to put railing to put its snow golem, you know. And you all are doing stuff. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Anyways, I planted some berries.
Yeah, I remember your little base with berries and stuff around.
Yeah, that was silly trying. It really was. But it, it's so hard for me to care about like the villagers when they're just the normal Minecraft ones for some reason. Why? Like my one of my favorite things to do is I put like Minecraft Comes Alive on or something when I play. I always modify it with some version of that. Like Minecraft's Alive Reborn is my favorite, but some of that. And then I wind up spending like, you know, how much did you play Minecraft these 2 months or whatever? I'm like, oh, I played, 15 hours. Oh, cool. How much of that was spent in town? 14. Play. And let me.
Yeah.
I wish I had more time to play, and maybe I will, but yeah, that's about it. So,
Yeah. I definitely don't got all the time to play as much as I used to anymore. Although it would be nice to have like a community server again, because it definitely was nice playing with everyone.
yeah, it was very fun. Yes, it's yeah. Um, That's all I really got to say about Minecraft. It's a lot of fun. It's a great game. Anyone can get started in and just play a game and learn how sort of like gaming things work for you. Like a lot of people who have problems with dizziness and stuff from like heights in games or whatnot. Playing Minecraft doesn't trigger it enough to give them like common problems, but it does enough to let them know they have that issue. So that could be something really important if you're new to gaming or trying to get into it for the first time, to play something like Minecraft before you do something like Portal. Like I know a lot of ladies who tried playing Portal who that was like the first game. They're like, I'm gonna go play this game, and they find out that they're so hypersensitive to changes in the environment and like their like how high they are, elevation, all this other stuff, that their body still triggers those responses even in the video game. So they wind up having all this dizziness and other stuff. And they didn't know they had that issue. So definitely Minecraft's a better one for like your first step in the door of video games if you're just starting, rather than something like you know, uh, anything that has a lot more like parkour or stuff in it, that definitely start something a little bit less, but where it's still able to be present. Like you don't have to do parkour stuff in Minecraft if you don't want to. But if you do, you can learn if you have those sorts of issues. So, yay! Minecraft is cool. Wow. Yeah. Findable.
Yeah, it's definitely a quick beginner game for everyone.
Okay, so but we let's see here. Forum and social role play was the next thing we had, and then kindness and niceties. I think we could do those pretty fast, actually, if you want.
Sure, that'll be good. Okay, we're kind of going pretty long anyway. I don't want to take up too much.
Yeah. Let's see here. So forums are neat because, you get the time and space you need to light out a long, interesting chunk of something and then put it down. But the issue is that everyone has that opportunity and time, and they can take as long as they want. If it'd be like 2 weeks before someone responds, unless you all set up things individually to make it only there at the same time. So forum playing can be a lot of fun, but it takes a lot more involvement and communication with people. And if you mess up, it has a much bigger impact. So if, for example, you try to word something your character does one way and you word it wrong, it could be a problem. So if you have a character be like, oh, they're really stinky. So I'm having a battle with this other character. I described the stinkiness of mine and how that would be like, whoa, my character's using the stinky and it's an issue. Ha 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 ha. If I word that wrong, it would sound like I said the other character has been affected by the stink, when really the other character might not be. I don't know. They could be like a Jedi or whatever, and be like, I have trained myself for this. And they do this whole thing where they talk about how it would be really hard for anyone else, but because of their training, they do this thing, and, you should be way more like involved in private communication and stuff with someone in a forum thing. Because when you put something down, if you mess it up, it's one, it's gonna stay there forever. And two, it might be completely nullified. Like, oh, I worded this wrong. I have to go rewrite this whole thing that I did, or stuff like that. In a social space, it might be like a sentence or two that you put in there. You might be rapid fire responding. So the way you would do communication on that is as long as you guys talk ahead of time, usually you're pretty good. And if you word something a little differently, they can still respond to it in a way that gets it back to when it should be. Like you have to work a little harder to take control of someone else, like say, hey, this person did this, as opposed to just wording how you did something. It's a lot easier to say stuff that if it's a problem, it can just be ignored or glanced over in the social media space. Take on Twitter. We have the CRC, but we get these conversations and stuff. And if someone says, I throw a javelin and a snake dies, you just ignore that guy. You just move on and it's fine. You know, uh, Whatever. Someone might even put a response down like, dang, I wish that happened, or whatever. You can have fun with that. Or, but it's a lot harder for someone else to say something like, I made the other character throw the spear. Like, usually when that happens, it's because someone is trying to control a conversation. No, hey, my guy, what's up? We talk about private space, whatever. On a forum, there's more of the long form role playing, so just wording something wrong could do that. So, yeah. I think they're both very fun spaces, but they're different. If you like long form writing and stuff like that, and really talking with someone one on one, forum role plays could be for you. If you like more over having a meeting and chatting with people to discuss how things are going to go and then running it live at an agreed upon time, then I think social role plays are probably more up your alley. But that's my opinion of like really quick, we're rushing through this pow, pow, pow. What do you have to say on the subject of forum versus social roleplay? Hello.
I mean, I pretty much have to agree with you there. I don't really have, I guess, that much experience versus in like, forum, I guess, role play scenarios. Um, but because like, the CRC and this stuff was kind of like my first delve into like role play and whatnot. But I'd say like, yeah, that's definitely something you would want to make sure before you like get into like these scenarios. Just it's always better to be safe than sorry, as I always like to say. I don't really have like any like big huge opinions that I guess I disagree with you with. Um, and I'm not really, I guess, that experienced in it, so I um probably would just go along with what you said, to be honest.
Doki doki. So, our last little tidbit we have is kindness versus niceties. And this is something I feel is very important when it comes to online spaces and real world spaces in general, wherever you are. But kindness and niceties, you need both to different degrees. In a lot of places I was, niceties barely existed. It was essentially you called someone by what they chose to be called. It was rarely ever a thing of like male or female or whatever. It was more like their title, their name, or their job. That was it. That was what genders were for me for the longest time was your job or your title, or possibly a name you have. And a lot of people had different names. Like, for example, people would have their Christian name, they would have their national name, and then they would have like their like true name and a few others that they had and stuff like that. You would see all these different things where there's these different names, but in the right context, you had to use the right name or title or job. Like you might call someone like that, the Axeman. You might call them that. And that's how you would refer to them whenever you're talking about them in a meeting with a bunch of people and stuff. They would always just be the Axeman. It would never be what their like Christian name is. Like their Christian name could be Apollo. So if you're at church, they're Apollo. But if you're out there with everybody else having a conversation, they're the Axeman, and everyone knows who you're talking about because they're the Axeman. That's that guy. Always has been, always will be. And if you're in another situation, like say you at their house where their parents are and stuff, then you might use like the English name, which could be totally different. It could be Michael or something like that. And so there's all these different things. And if you were like back in like real lands and stuff like that, you would call them by their like actual name, which would be like their admin name or their witchin name or anything like that, depending on what group you're in, who you were talking to, stuff like that. Like if you're dealing with businessmen in Anchorage, you're going to use someone's like white name. That's what you're going to use. If you're talking to a church person, you're going to use their church name. And like the name that's called when they go to heaven. Like that's the name that you call them by. And it's you're going by like say, don't know how to explain this, but there's certain other spots there in different subsects. You call them by the title. And this could be a job or something based off what they did. So it could be someone who's just called the warrior. Like I remember someone who was called that because they actually had someone who was an enemy of theirs. Like this is a guy who like killed people, who had a horse and he stole the horse. So that fulfilled one of those requirements of being a warrior from his like people that he'd come from before he moved to Alaska. So it was like, oh hey, he's the warrior because he's the only guy who actually stole someone's like air quotes war pony, so he's the warrior. So that was like what everyone could call him, and he was known as. So and we all had fun calling him that. It was always said in like the warrior, because we thought it funny. But there's groups like that, and that was like the main nicety that you would put on people. Other than that, there weren't really niceties in any of the groups I was with, like at all. Like, you could walk up to someone with lost a leg and say, oh, haha, what's up, one leg? And that was sort of expected. And they would have something mean and nasty to say to you. And that's just how things were. So there we had barely any niceties, but we had a lot of like kindness on an individual basis, you know? So that was weird and different than a lot of other places. Like if you go to like the Midwest, you'll see a lot of niceties with like pretend nice to you. They're like, oh, hello, darling, don't you want a pie or whatever? But as soon as you walk away, they're saying mean, nasty things about you. Like, did you see them look at their dress? Blah. You know. But that just basically covers like niceties versus kindness, you know? Like there's some basic niceties that are expected in whatever community you're in. And then there's like kindnesses, which are different. When it comes to the online space, we typically see that there's a few sets of niceties in your group that's expected and a few different kindnesses. But they're not obvious, especially if you're coming from a physical space to the online space for the first time. And it's sort of weird to notice where they're at. So, excuse me, one of the things I do to keep up with the pace is if people want to avoid a subject matter, typically it's out of a nicety you don't understand. For example, when I was in the CRC, we were having a conversation about Rome's attempts to mesh Christianity into Roman culture. And we got to talking about the reasons it wasn't working, even though it was being tried. Like the guy in charge at the time of Rome would eat Christians during his big parties and all this other stuff, and he wrote letters about that. And all this other stuff was going on. And we were talking about that, and someone came in and said specifically that they like, whoa, we don't know about that. That's not necessarily true. And like, we literally have writings about that, but okay. And we're trying to redirect us away from the conversation at that time. You know, and if this were just a normal conversation, like in a normal physical space, we'd just be like, okay, well, you butt out, and we'd have our conversation in peace. But because we were in an online open space in the main hub of communication, you know, I was like, hey, maybe we're hitting on something that like they don't want to talk about for some reason or want in this particular area, like maybe talking about the atrocities of like Rome. It would really offend like a small group of people here, or maybe talking about cannibalism in general is taboo, which is a normal taboo in a lot of places to even talk about. So it was like, okay, somehow here we've hit upon the niceties and the expectations that we don't go over these certain things. So, okay, we'll have this conversation in private, or we'll continue at another time in another space, you know, but that's basically how we went about it. So we're like, well, the interesting thing that brought us to that point was we were discussing this, so whatever, let's go back to that, or, you know, whatever. So I found that it's usually that. So it was weird, it was over niceties, but it was over ones I didn't understand at the time. It turned out that whole thing was because certain people, when Rome was made to look bad, or at a European nation and whatnot they would get hypersensitive about it and stuff, and sort of have like a mini sit. You know, so that was sort of a thing. So just to prevent someone who was online at the time from overreacting to what it's just, you know, talking about facts was basically what was going on. But yeah, so you know, it's just being nice to your fellow people sometimes requires you to be like, oh, well, maybe we should take a step back or go into another space. Like, our conversation was great, but we could have had it in private. We could have had it in like second chat. You know, there's different chat areas there. We could have gone in a different chat area to talk about it in more depth. But yeah, you know, so there's some things, and usually a weird interrupt like that is because there's a nicety at play that you don't understand. And I really think it's better if instead of making it sound weird like that, like what my case was, you just come in and sort of say it because then you would know why. Oh, okay, and be like, okay, then I'll have this conversation in private, or we'll go to the chat part, or oh, I get it. We're just gonna make some people have a really bad day, and that's not what we're about here. Hey, other person, are you in like a history discussion Discord thing that you can continue the conversation there, or whatever. It's not hard, but just be as upfront about it as you can be while being polite. I guess that handles most niceties, in my opinion. There's this weird taboo thing where it's like, oh, telling someone what the problem is? No, I'm not gonna do that. Just tell them. Just do it. Be like, hey, here we don't talk about that subject matter. So we're gonna just move on to something else right now, or whatever. You guys can have the conversation in private. Da-da-da. Be honest with us and upfront, and that will get you to respect everything that's going on there. Like, for example, me, I'll hear people talk about, say, they might talk about something like, ooh, socialism, yay, or ooh, this communism thing, whoopee, yay. And I have nothing positive to say or add to the conversation because of my experiences, all incredibly super mega ultra negative. And as long as they're not doing something against like the TOS that they've agreed to, or that, affects history in a lying matter or stuff, I'll just stay out of the conversation and I'll disappear for the day. I'm gonna do something else. I'm like, okay, they're talking about that stuff. I'm just gonna walk away, do something else. Well, I want to go in there and just rip it away entirely. Like, there's nothing useful from any of that. You're out of here. Why but they're allowed to talk about that. The nicety thing is to let them have the conversation as long as it fits within the stuff. If they start saying, man, I really wish the socialists finished off this ethnic group when they were in charge over here, then I get to step in and go, hey, that's against the rules of stuff we're talking about here, and it's just immoral in general. Let's not do that, and get a GM type person to step in and fix it. But if they're not doing that, you should typically let people have their little weird space, unless it's specifically against the area, like, whatever. But yeah, so there's all kinds of weird things like that to get used to in the online spaces, because there's people from literally all over the globe. So, yeah. And then that sort of covers niceties, like basic things where you just let people do their stuff, or you see someone come online and you say hello, just basic niceties. And then there's kindness, which is different. So sometimes kindness is, you can be mean and be kind, but the purpose of kindness is never to be mean or to lower somebody. It's always to improve them. Like, if someone's posted a piece of art, the nice thing to do, the nicety is to say, yay, nice art piece, and leave it at that. The kind thing to do is to point out a few things that were really good about it and why those things are good. And then, if they ask for any advice or tips and stuff, then the kind thing is to then like, hey, well, I noticed this about it and it could be improved in such or such a way, or something like that. You don't just say what's bad online, or you don't tell someone certain things. Like, you wait till the opportunity to tell them has been presented by them. That's the kind way online, because if you just tell someone something straight up, it's very... Yeah, it's like walking in and just smacking the Mona Lisa saying, bam, here's something wrong and weird with this, man. Why does it look like a man and a woman at the same time? On the angle I look at it, oh, I hate it. Ugh. It's like doing that instead of, being like, what an interesting piece. There's all this stuff it says about people and the world and the femininity and masculinity, blah, blah. So to be kind online is different than in the real world. Like, in the real world space, you might tell someone just how to improve the thing because that's just how that person you are. But online, you don't know. And so you always need to start with the, hey, you did this stuff well. And you don't go out of your way to bring out the things that they didn't do well unless they specifically ask. Because, yeah, otherwise it's messing with all sorts of weird stuff online. And, you want to be kind, you want to be helpful. So there, that's really all I got on that. So, you got anything?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I pretty much see where you're getting at right there. We definitely do need a bit of both. At times though, I feel like I don't know. They might just be a me thing, but sometimes just niceties can't really be like the best thing, even though like it may seem like a temporary solution to like uh something going on. Sometimes I feel like it's just you kind of just kicking the can down the road sometimes. And like you mentioned earlier with like the conversation you were having about like Rome and stuff, how like the person who was like kind of saying all that was being very vague about it. And like, in a situation like that, I feel like just being nice and like, saying, "Oh, we'll stop." Um, in my opinion, I feel like yeah, that might be like a small solution, but I feel like, a better thing would be like, ask them like, "Hey, well, like, there's this and this," or like try to get like the main issue behind it, or like the main reason behind it. It's like they don't have to give all the details and whatnot. They can just give like a very simple reasoning of like, I just don't like it. I just don't want to talk about it. I don't want to see like a conversation related to that. And it's kind of like, I'd rather have, that sort of truth told to me, even if it's like harshly told to me or whatever. I'd rather have like a truth told to me than just being nice and just not really getting anything from it. But I do understand like sometimes niceties is needed. Um, but you know I feel like we kind of got to a point where like it's sometimes like always expected from everyone or from you. Especially like there's some people who always expect everyone to be like that. It's like we can't always be like that. There are some limits that like we gotta stop at. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
so
we
yeah.
we need that truth, that why, So that's what really matters when it comes to those. And sometimes you just have to. My point was that sometimes you have to stop in the moment, realize this is something you don't understand, and do that first, and then find out the why later, especially if you're newer in a space. But if you're the person who's trying to stop the thing because of a nicety, please explain why. Please, for the love of all that's good, that's what we need, that's what we want. We're all A-okay with going, oh, yes, we'll stop because of X for Y. Thank you for letting us know. We'll continue a different way or somewhere else or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd very much rather have that instead. As for like kindness and stuff though, like at that point, that's when, actual like I'd say kindness comes and it's like, you tell me why, and it's like, yeah, okay. And that point, it's not really a nicety anymore. I'm just like actually being like respectful and kind towards you. And they're like, all right, yeah, I'll stop, speaking about this thing you don't want to speak about. And um, I feel like yeah, uh, like niceties are there as like like a thing that we just like have to do sometimes. But I feel like true kindness is kind of like I guess earned more instead of just an expectation.
Yeah. Perfect. So I think we covered our subjects pretty darn well. This is actually like the longest podcast thing I've done to date, but who knows? They get longer. But
Yeah, they'll probably
yeah,
get longer.
this will say this was great. Very glad I got to have you on here. It's been wonderful, Shopnil, and I am excited for eventually doing this again when we have other things you want to talk about. If there's anything you want to say, any last like outwords or anything, please do so. Yay.
Yeah, no, nothing really specific. I'm just, thank you for having me on. I'm pretty honored for being on here and being able to talk. I've always enjoyed speaking with you, whether it be like actual like talking or just typing. And I really enjoyed this. And yeah, thank you again.
You're very well done. Thank you so much. I'm gonna go ahead and say goodbye now. Goodbye, everyone. Bye bye. Bye. Toodaloo. Chow mein noodles. Bye bye.